Your Say. We're going to get to Englishness, Rwanda and a little bit on pub courts, all after your news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 3 minutes past 12. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. A child is among 5 migrants who've died trying to cross the English Channel after their small boat got into difficulties off the French coast. The incident happened off Wimereux Beach near Boulogne just before 2 a.m. A number of other migrants were rescued, with at least one now critically ill in hospital. GB News can also reveal that another 3 small boats launched from an area near the site of this morning's tragedy. Latest figures show the number of migrants crossing the Channel has increased by 24% this year. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says it shows that urgent action is needed.
Shows how dangerous these boat crossings are. They put lives at risk and they're undermining our border security. And criminal gangs are making huge profits from these dangerous boats and from putting lives at risk in this way. And that's why we urgently need proper action to tackle these dangerous boat crossings.
This morning's incident comes just hours after the government's flagship Rwanda bill finally passed through Parliament. The Prime Minister called it a landmark law, promising that nothing will stand in the way of flights getting off the ground. The cost of putting each migrant on a plane is expected to reach £11,000, while Rwanda will get £20,000 for each asylum seeker who's relocated there. Illegal Migration Minister Michael Tomlinson says flights will take off within weeks.
I'm keen to see things happening as soon as possible. The Prime Minister set out and made it very clear that it's going to take 10 to 12 weeks for the first flight to actually take off and to get off the ground. But you're right, last night was a momentous occasion. We were told that the bill would never pass, that we'd never get it through, and the Prime Minister was determined to ensure that we got the bill through, and we did that last night. And shortly after midnight, I found myself standing at the bar of the House of Lords and listening to the final speeches there, where they confirmed that the bill was actually going to go through. It's a landmark moment and an important moment for this Rwanda scheme.
Meanwhile, the Home Secretary is echoing those comments as he prepares to discuss illegal migration with his Italian counterpart.
Today is a landmark moment in our plan to stop the boats.
James Cleverly says Italy is one of Britain's most crucial partners in tackling the shared challenge. He'll visit the Coast Guard in Rome and discuss efforts to stem illegal arrivals from North Africa. He'll also become Britain's first government minister to visit Lampedusa, where around 110,000 migrants landed last year. Vladimir Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. That's according to a warning from Rishi Sunak. The Prime Minister will announce Britain's largest ever package of aid for Kyiv, worth £500 million, as he arrives in Warsaw. He says the funding is essential for the defence of Britain and all of Europe against the Russian president's brutal ambitions. Ukraine's President Zelensky welcomed the record military package, which includes long-range missiles, armoured vehicles and boats. In the US, Donald Trump will appear in court soon for day 2 of the first criminal trial of the former US president. The court has already heard prosecutors claim the former president orchestrated a criminal conspiracy to corrupt the 2016 election. They also argue that payments made to an adult film star, so-called hush money, were in breach of the law. Donald Trump denies any wrongdoing. The case could complicate Mr. Trump's path to re-election match against President Biden. But former Nevada Republican chairwoman Amy Tarkanian says it won't stop his campaign.
He's still campaigning, you better believe it. And even though he has a gag order, which he has a tough time following, he, from what I understand, behaved today inside the courtroom. But as soon as he stepped outside the courtroom, he had addressed to the media and continued to open his mouth and complain once again.
And Britain's roads are in miserable state of disrepair. That's according to the RAC. The company says breakdowns rose by 9% in the last year due to large numbers of potholes. It's led to more than 27,000 call-outs in the year to the end of March. And the cost of fixing the problem across England and Wales is estimated at more than £16 billion. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Tom and Pip.
Thanks, Sophia. Now, good afternoon, Britain. It is 12:08. And just hours after the government's flagship Rwanda bill passed in Parliament, 5 people have died whilst attempting to cross the English Channel. That's just hours after the bill passed.
Among the dead is thought to be a child. Reacting to the incident north of Bologna, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, said, "These tragedies have to stop. I will not accept a status quo which costs so many lives." We're joined live by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Mark, what's the latest you can bring us on this?
Well, the search and rescue operation is all but ended, really, but what we have now is an operation to deal with multiple other small boats that, despite this tragedy at Wimereux Beach, which is just north of Boulogne, have launched this morning heading for UK waters. Now, this incident happened in the early hours of the morning. A small number of boats set off from the beach at Wimereux. One got into significant difficulties. It's believed that the boat got stranded for a while on a sandbank, managed to free itself, but then there was some kind of movement on the boat in which a number of people toppled into the water, and then a big search and rescue operation underway involving several helicopters and various maritime rescue vessels. 5 people have been confirmed dead, 3 men, a woman and a young child, we believe a 4-year-old girl. Now, as I say, in addition to this tragedy, we have the steady flow of migrants continuing to make this illegal journey across the English Channel. 4 set off, well, actually more than that, about 6 boats set off. A couple have had to turn back because of the weather conditions, but 3 of them have made it to UK waters. Another one is just about to make it to UK waters. Already, the Border Force Defender has arrived at Dover Harbour with 67 migrants on board. And then another similar number of migrants has just arrived at Dover Harbour on another vessel. The RNLI lifeboat from Dover has also picked up migrants, and it will be heading back to Dover Harbour shortly, probably within the next 15 minutes. So whatever the government does in terms of passing this bill clearly designed to act as a deterrent, for the moment at least, that is not proving to be a deterrent. Of course, no flights have yet gone to Rwanda, and that may change. But for the moment, at least, the people smugglers are continuing to push people out on these very dangerous journeys.
A hugely concerning picture, Mark. Thank you for bringing us the very latest there. Of course, this is all in the context as what we were talking about at the top of the programme, this bill being passed. Mark, in your estimation, do you think that it will be the case that a regular rhythm of flights, as the Prime Minister promised yesterday, will stop tragedies like this?
I'm not so sure, to be honest. I think if the Rwanda bill had got off, or at least the Rwanda plan had got off the ground when it was first announced now more than 2 years ago by Boris Johnson at Lydd Airport in Kent, then it could have had a deterrent effect. I was on the other side of the English Channel speaking regularly to migrants over there who were very concerned about what it would mean for them. So there's no doubt, they're plugged in. They know what was being planned in the UK, and none of them wanted to end up in East Africa. So it could have had a deterrent effect there. I think if the government is sincere in terms of pushing the vast majority, if not all of those who come over from the English Channel over a certain time period, say the bill does get off the ground in July, then everyone that comes across for the next month or 2 is sent to East Africa. Yes, I think it could absolutely be a deterrent. But if we see a regular drumbeat of flights going to Rwanda, which are relatively modest in nature and actually don't account for the majority of migrants who are coming across the English Channel, then I think people will still take the risk. They'll make the calculation that, there's a 20% or 10% chance of me being sent to East Africa and I'll still come across the Channel.
Really, really interesting stuff. The scale of this matters rather than just the binary it happening or not happening. Mark White, thank you very much.
As we said then, that the Rwanda bill passed overnight at exactly 8 minutes past midnight. Here's how the illegal migration minister, Michael Tomlinson, reacted.
The minister set out and made it very clear that it's going to take 10 to 12 weeks for the first flight to actually take off. It's a landmark moment and an important moment for this Rwanda scheme.
10 to 12 weeks, a curious amount of time given that they've had 2 years to prepare for this. But as we heard from Yvette Cooper as well, Labour's Shadow Home Secretary this morning, this was her reaction.
The problem with the Rwanda scheme, and bear in mind this is there was announced 2 years ago. They told us they were implementing this 2 years ago, and they have just kept writing cheques to Rwanda. But the first thing they're going to now do is write another £50 million cheque for Rwanda.
She's right there, another £50 million cheque, taking the total to £350 million. I noticed a bit earlier, that sort of reminded me of something, £350 million.
Oh, was it something on a bus?
It was something on a bus. One week of gross membership contributions to the European Union.
And if Labour get in, then they will pull it anyway.
Yes.
Although it might take time for them to do so. So then there's all that money, £500 million at least,
well, yeah,
down the drain.
Really, really concerning. Well, shall we get the view of the Labour Party now? The former Europe Minister, Labour politician Dennis McShane, joins us now in the studio. Dennis, I suppose it's going to be a real challenge for the Labour Party. Say they win the election in the autumn, say that's after dozens, perhaps hundreds of flights have taken off. Are the Labour Party really going to cancel this scheme?
Well, let's see if it works first. I've been visiting different refugee sites over my years in politics, and as a minister, they're coming into Greece, they're coming into Italy, they're coming into Portugal, they're coming into France, they're coming into the Atlantic holiday resorts that the Portuguese and the Spanish have in the Atlantic, and it's just not stopping because there's so much poverty, so much despair. We're going to send a few guys back to, or sorry, not back, they're not going back, we're going to dump them in Rwanda, a rotten little East African autocracy. It's not the great country that's
one of the fastest-growing countries in Europe, well, in Africa.
Look, when you start from after a genocide, you only have to add, £2 a day, and you're the fastest-growing percentage country. It is a country that certainly we came back after a terrible genocide, but they've still got the same old guy running it, the same old autocracy, no press freedom. He
was the guy that helped end the genocide.
I'm sorry?
Paul Kagame was the guy that led the troops that ended the genocide.
Yeah, indeed. We celebrated that. That's 20 years ago. And once an African guy, an African guy takes over, it's very difficult to dislodge him. So Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, we are taking asylum seekers from Rwanda. I don't want to get into a pro or anti-Rwanda debate. It'll be decided by the courts. It could end up at the European Court of Human Rights. I was there last week, where British parliamentarians said that Kosovo could join the European Convention of Human Rights to have the protection of the Human Court of Rights. We now are possibly going to remove that from the British people. It's integral to the Good Friday Peace Agreement. I'm going a bit down the line now. I don't think a Labour government is going to sacrifice the Good Friday Agreement for a wacko scheme. Every person sent back has to be accompanied by 3 Border Force agents. It's going to be a nice, jolly aeroplane ride all the way to Rwanda, at huge cost to the taxpayer. And as the Israelis found out, they deported African asylum seekers there. And within 2 weeks, they'd all left because they're not under lock and key, they're not under armed guard, they're not going to make a life in Rwanda. They start heading north again. So, good luck to Tory colleagues celebrating last night. Don't know why it lasted so long. They got an enormous majority. All this rubbish.
Not in the House of Lords. They hold 1 in 3 seats.
They've got there in the House of Lords enough Lords.
They're the biggest party. They don't have a majority.
No, they don't have a majority. That was deliberately done by David Cameron. I don't quite know why. But in any case, it was delayed a short while, and it's going to be delayed again, because you only have to knock on a judge's door, say, hello, this is XYZ, Mr. QC. I've got a case of this guy who's been sent back. He fears because he's gay or he's of the wrong religion, he'll be badly treated in Rwanda. Will you hear the case? And any British judge will. And so the whole circus starts again. And we have to, surely we should be asking, Mark was asking it, your reporter, I thought was excellent. If you go to all these other countries, they've received far more people by boats in Greece, in Italy, in Spain, and they keep coming. They put them on remote islands in the Aegean. They keep coming. This is just fantasy politics. And I really don't think, I mean, Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, told Boris Johnson it won't work, it'll be very expensive. James Cleverly has said we can't possibly leave the European Convention on Human Rights, the European Court of Human Rights. So they're buying a bit of time until the election. But I just say one tiny point. I was out canvassing with 60 Labour canvassers yesterday in London for Sadiq Khan for the mayoral election. I canvass 3 or 4 times a week. Not once this year, Tom Pippa, have any person on the doorstep mentioned boat people or Rwanda. Compared to all the problems with European immigrants, or before you were born, when I was a young man, Enoch Pastime, all the immigrants from Pakistan, India, Afro-Caribbean, 1970s, early 80s. This is a non-issue. Lord Ashcroft...
Dennis, I read your tweet on this.
Yeah.
You were canvassing in Westminster, weren't you?
Yeah, so
in the heart of the political bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. In social housing, Westminster, I can see St John's, Smith Square, the great church that all the politicians go to, round the door from where...
It just might be, it might feel a bit different. It might come up on the doorsteps a bit more if you're in Kent, or if you're in, I don't know, but parts of the Red Wolves, Sunderland, if you're in Bishop Auckland.
I'll be canvassing there too, and I remember the impact of Kosovo refugees. We all thought we should take them in the late 1990s, arriving in Rotherham, and it caused a lot of resentment. And then I had to live as an MP on the phone-ins, on the doorstep, with all of the William Hague and Nigel Farage banging on about European immigrants. I accept, the result of the referendum, of course. But there's nothing like that. I'm prepared to bet, because I will be campaigning in Red Wall seats. It's just not an issue. Lord Ashcroft, the famous guy, did a big poll, and the majority thought the Rwanda idea was nuts.
Well, we'll have to see how it all turns out. But Dennis McShane, thank you very much for joining us and talking us through your perspective.
Coming up very soon, we're heading to Dartford, where plenty of people are celebrating all things English for St George's Day. You're with Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
SUV drivers in Oxford will face higher parking charges, proposals tabled by the local Green Party or passed by the City Council. The motion argues that heavier cars like SUVs cause more damage to roads, are more likely to seriously injure or kill pedestrians, and cause more illnesses due to pollution. However, the Alliance of British Drivers has condemned the plan as absolutely outrageous. Well, let's get the thoughts now of the legendary motoring journalist, Quentin Wilson. Quentin, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. We hear a lot about the war on motorists, this time targeting SUVs because of their weight, and the charges could be astronomical. This idea first started in Paris. Now it's coming to Oxford. Can you tell us a bit about how it would work?
OK, so the idea is that the charges will penalise people who drive heavier SUVs, and I guess by implication electric cars, although Oxford Council haven't said exactly what they're going to do with EVs. But this is all based around this notion of SUVs being heavier than passenger cars, therefore wearing out the roads more. Now, there was a study, I've got it here in front of me, from the University of Edinburgh in 2022 that said real-world tests found that overwhelmingly the wear is caused by large vehicles, buses, heavy good vehicles. Road wear from cars and motorcycles is so low that this is immaterial. Now, obviously, driving around a medieval city like Oxford in an SUV isn't the brightest thing in the world to do. But the idea that we should penalise the owners of these cars based on imperfect science that's been read on social media, I think is completely wrong.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 24 minutes past 12. Now, some breaking news just in. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker is here with us now because, Cameron, there's been an update from the royals. What is it?
There has, Tom. Yes, Kensington Palace in the last few moments has released a new photograph of Prince Louis to mark his 6th birthday. I can tell you that it was taken by the Princess of Wales in the last few days in the grounds of Windsor Castle. I'm also assured that this photograph is unedited. If you remember the hoo-ha around the Mother's Day photograph with the Princess of Wales and her 3 children, George, Charlotte and Louis, it was killed by photo agencies because of the apparent manipulation. This one, completely different. It is unedited to mark his 6th birthday, but this is not the usual way that a royal birthday photograph is released. It's usually released the evening before the birthday takes place, so the papers can have it for the following morning's edition. That has not happened this time. It appears maybe there was a little bit of umming and ahhing from the Prince and Princess of Wales whether they would release a photograph, but I'm getting the sense this morning that they were really grateful for all of the general public messaging and tweeting and putting on Instagram a happy birthday, Prince Louis, and they wanted to thank the general public for their well wishes to their youngest son on his 6th birthday, which is why they have decided to release the photograph on their social media channels rather than giving it to the media first to then release under embargo. So that is why the Prince and Princess have decided to release that photograph, and I understand that when Princess Charlotte's birthday happens next month, a similar thing is going to happen, so it's going to be released on their social media channels.
For the people, not the press. Well, Cameron Walker, thank you very much for bringing us that update.
Doesn't he look absolutely glorious? More and more like his big brother now.
I'll be counting the fingers in the next advert
Yeah,
to make sure it's not edited.
I know, but still loving that cheeky little smile. Now, of course, it might be Prince Louis's birthday, but it is also St George's Day today and the birthday of William Shakespeare. We'll cross to Dartford now, where red crosses are apparently flying high. GB News presenters Stephen Dixon, Ellie Costello are there. Stephen, over to you.
Yes, good afternoon, you two. I have to say, isn't that a great picture of Prince Louis? It's put a smile on my face today. Look, we're here down the pub, as you can imagine, as you would be, getting ready for what is going to be a fantastic afternoon here in Dartford. The parade is going to be underway with 700 school children taking part and paper mache dragons and all sorts. There's loads going on here. Hasn't started yet. That's the key, which is why we're still keeping a comparatively low profile till the fun begins, we think in about an hour or so, and we'll bring you full coverage of that. But the big question, well, there's a couple of big questions. Should we celebrate St George's Day? Should we be more patriotic? I guess why not is the question, is the answer to that one. But also, what does it mean for towns like this? Does it have a real impact when the community gets together and celebrates in this way? So I thought, with that in mind, I'd send Ellie out and about.
Yes, thank you very much, Stephen. And you can see the sort of impact that this is having on the high street here in Dartford. It is packed in Esquire Coffee, the coffee and cake shop. You know me, can never get me too far from the cakes, and the cakes do look wonderful here. I'm joined by the owner, Gurjit, who's with me now. Gurjit, what does a parade like this, one of the biggest in the UK, what does it mean for business here today?
It's fantastic for business. Year on year, it's got stronger and stronger. You know, credit goes out to Jeremy Kyatt and Govinda for the cohesion. They put on a very well organised show. The kids seem to enjoy it, dating back from school, and they're doing their art and craft and bringing out all their posters and flags. It really is a real family-orientated parade, and it's just fantastic for business, and I hope it continues for a long, long time to come. So
we're expecting it all to start kicking off in about an hour's time. What can we expect? Because you were telling me this happens every single year, and it's just getting bigger, isn't it?
To be honest with you, I think Govinda probably answered that question better than me, because every year they've got some great surprises. As you can see around us now, we've got an orchestra band that have just come in. There's stilt walkers. There's people dressed up outside. So every year there's a little bit more added on, which gives it a bit more fun, a little more glamour each and every year.
It looks absolutely packed out there on the high street already. We can see the security presence already. Is it something that we have to be aware of, obviously, with all the children around? It is a lot of organisation to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back to Dayton, to Jeremy and Govinda as well, and what they've done for the show. I think security for children is incredibly important. And although I've never seen any incidents ever happen here, but it's great to see the lads out there and make everyone feel safe and secure.
Yeah, and you're a local man, you're a local business owner. What does this mean for the local area? Why Dartford?
Well, I think it's crucial for Dartford, really. There's other parades that do go on, but this is what builds the high street, builds the community, and makes people aware that there are businesses like myself out there, so they can come in and visit us, and also just see the growth of the children through the school as well, and they understand the history of British and English culture.
Gurjit, wonderful to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your time. Better let you get back behind the coffee counter. It's very, very busy in here. We can see a brass band have just walked into this coffee shop, and there's Morris dancers outside on the high street. We're all ramping up now with the parade due to start in around half an hour's time. Tom and Pip.
Marvellous. Well, we'll be back with you when that parade is going. I look forward to it, and I look forward to seeing those papier-mâché dragons as well. Marvellous stuff. Thanks for joining us.
I was looking forward to seeing more of those cakes.
I'm sure there was plenty.
Bring one back.
Plenty of both. Plenty of both. Unfortunately, it's just tea in my mug and not beer, but that's for after the show. Well, we'll have much more to come, of course, on the programme. Just a little update, not just out and about in the country, but also on Downing Street. The Common Sense Minister, Esther McVey, former GBNews editor, she's hosting a St George's Day reception at Downing Street a bit later. It's just been announced, celebrating the best of English produce. So it's happening all around, but much more to come. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Coming up, we'll be discussing the alarming rise in alcohol-related deaths in women, and of course, more coverage of St George's Day across the country. But first, the headlines with Sophia Wenzler.
Thanks, Tom. It's 12:30. I'm Sophia Wenzler in the GB newsroom. Your headlines. A child is among 5 migrants who've died trying to cross the English Channel after their small boat got into difficulties off the French coast. The incident happened off Wimereux Beach near Boulogne just before 2 a.m. A number of other migrants were rescued, with one now critically ill in hospital. GB News can also reveal that another 3 small boats launched from an area near the site of this morning's tragedy. Latest figures show the number of migrants crossing the Channel has increased by 24% this year. This morning's incident comes just hours after the government's flagship Rwanda bill finally passed through Parliament. The Prime Minister called it a landmark law, promising that nothing will stand in the way of flights getting off the ground. The government expects charter planes to depart from Rwanda within 10 to 12 weeks, though ministers have conceded that the numbers on board will be small. In other news, the Prime Minister will announce Britain's largest ever package of aid for Ukraine as he travels to Berlin and Warsaw. The £500 million pledge comes as Rishi Sunak warns that Vladimir Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. He says the funding is essential for Britain's defence against Russian president's brutal ambitions. The funds will cover new weaponry following a request from Ukraine's government. And a new photo of Prince Louis has been released by Kensington Palace, marking his 6th birthday. The unedited close-up image shows the young prince lying on a rug on the grass and smiling at the camera. It was taken by his mother at Windsor in the last few days. The family says they're grateful to all those who've wished them well. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
The M8 Kingston Bridge in Glasgow has 2 lanes closed westbound and very slow traffic to an accident from Anderston Cross at 19 through to junction 20 for the M74 interchange. Clockwise on the M25 there's heavy traffic to an earlier broken down lorry between 15 and 16. All lanes have reopened but delays still remain. Anti-clockwise on the M25 there's a lane closure whilst a lorry has a tyre changed just before junction 29 for Romford and Basildon. Traffic is coping well there at the moment. Southbound on the M5, all traffic has been temporarily held to an accident between 26 for Wellington through to Tiverton at 27. And in Swansea, the westbound side of the M4 has a lane closure on the exit slip road to junction 44 for Llansanlet. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Mark White was saying there, Sue, that he thinks it's getting worse, and you were nodding along to that. You've seen this over decades. Situation is sprawling along the coast, more people,
yes.
And the danger is ramping up.
Definitely, because the numbers and the money it's run like a military operation. I mean, I've been told that by the National Crime Agency, and I don't need to be told it by them to know it. It is meticulous because there's so much money involved. So they're marshalling migrants here, the gangs, they're controlling the gangs, and there will be a kingpin. You know, in some city far away in Erbil, or even in Paris, or in Brussels, who never goes anywhere near the beaches. It's like a Ponzi scheme, really.
Yeah. With that in mind, there's such vested interest, such money, such demand, a never-ending string of demand of people who want to come here.
People are already on their way, remember?
Yeah.
If we stop them now, they're already leaving. There's people leaving the Sudan now are going to reach the only place they want to get to, the French beaches, to get to the UK. They'll arrive in 2.5 years' time.
And so,
you see, they're on their way.
If it's that organised, that lucrative, that desirable, how on earth do we ever break that chain?
It sounds incredibly harsh, but I'm sure, I think if the EU change politically in the June elections, which I think it probably will,
yes,
I think they will put up, as the Greeks have done, holding camps all over Europe, the coasts of Europe, where people are assessed, just to see who is coming in, which would be a plus, as the Greeks have done, because we have no idea who is coming in.
Hello, welcome back. We want to talk to you now about the number of deaths specifically caused by alcohol across the UK, which has reached a record high, according to new figures. Now, this includes a surge in the number of women losing their lives to drink-related diseases.
Now, whilst the number of deaths for women remains lower than the number of deaths amongst men, the rate of increase is higher. Over the same 5-year period, deaths amongst men rose by 29%, whilst deaths amongst women rose by 37%.
Well, let's speak to Vanessa Hebditch about this. Vanessa is the Director of Communications and Policy at the British Liver Trust. Very good afternoon to you, Vanessa. A lot of this is being blamed on the the pandemic. Is that too simplistic an answer?
So I think the pandemic did cause many of us to drink a little bit more. People were very anxious, so perhaps people were sort of turning to alcohol. I think it caused an increase in the numbers of us that were drinking at home, and that's probably continued after the pandemic. And I also think just the general stresses and strains, the cost of living crisis, is also increasing the amount that many of us are drinking.
This is a very interesting and concerning trend because it's limited perhaps to some age groups but not to others. What can you tell us about who particularly is at risk here?
Well, what these figures show is that there's been particular increases in the middle-aged, both men and women, but as you've just mentioned, particularly in women. And I think that part of the reason for that is I think there's been a big shift in the UK's drinking culture. And, you know, many of us go around the supermarket now, we fill up our trolley with wine, we're drinking at home, a glass of wine, perhaps while we're cooking, while we're watching TV, while we're eating our dinner, and all of this adds up. Although alcohol-related cirrhosis can take over a decade to develop, people whose livers are already badly damaged can die when they suddenly increase their consumption. And so because of this, liver disease mortality is a really rapid indicator of changes in alcohol consumption amongst those heavier drinkers.
Now, Scotland also has a really bad problem as well. I mean, their number of alcohol-related deaths increased by 25% in 3 years, but they have actually increased, I think, their unit pricing. Will that make a difference, do you think? Is that a good way to tackle this?
I do think so. I think there are sort of three key drivers. One of them is affordability, and alcohol has become significantly cheaper. Another one is accessibility. It's available, you know, all day, every day at the local, you know, corner shop, etc. And then the third one is that acceptability. You know, many of us are drinking at all sorts of different times of the day. You know, there's Prosecco at brunch, or, you know, it's become much more acceptable within our society to drink.
Hang on a second. With those first two issues, affordability and accessibility, in Scotland for years now, they've had minimum unit level pricing. They've raised the price of alcohol. They're still having increased problems with alcoholism and alcohol-related deaths. Indeed, also in Scotland, if you want to buy alcohol in the evening, you can't. You're forbidden from purchasing it after 10 p.m. So it's less accessible and it's still having these problems. So perhaps the answers aren't making alcohol more expensive or less accessible. Perhaps there needs to be a cultural change here.
I completely agree that I think there does need to be a cultural change. But some of those other measures can sort of drive change. We also need sort of, you know, some shifts in, I think, you know, advertising and marketing, which drives the consumption of alcohol. But also consumers need to be able to make a choice. So we need better labelling on alcohol products. It's crazy that there's more information on a pint of milk than on a bottle of beer or wine. So people need to be able to make an informed choice. And I think it's become, as you say, so acceptable and ingrained in our culture that people don't realise that actually drinking too much can be really dangerous.
Well, I mean, we're talking a bit about the binge drinking culture as well, aren't we? Which still seems pretty prevalent amongst young people, certainly in this country. I mean, I was on the train the other day near Birmingham, and there was a gang of girls out for a night out, and they were just swigging from a whole bottle of wine. Pretty much finished it, and it was only about 8 o'clock, Vanessa.
Yeah. I think the other key thing for liver disease is that liver disease is a silent killer. There are usually no symptoms at all in the early stages. So the government actually recommends that men who regularly drink over 50 units, which is about the equivalent of 20 pints of beer, or women who drink over 35 units of alcohol per week, that's about 3.5 bottles of wine, should have a liver scan because it means that they're at risk. But we know at the British Liver Trust that in many parts of the country, patients are not routinely getting those liver scans. And we also know that when people do get a scan and they're told that their liver is starting to be a little bit damaged in those early stages, people are able to reduce their alcohol intake and sort of take a step back. So I think that would be a really key way of supporting people.
So do you think shock tactics come a little bit into this?
I don't know that shock tactics are the right way. Alcohol is also incredibly stigmatised. We live in this sort of double standard where it's everywhere, it's part of our culture, it's part of our society. But when people do get into trouble and start drinking too much, then they're really stigmatised. And we need to make it much more normal for people to ask for help if they feel that they do have alcohol problems. Nobody needs to feel ashamed or to fear losing their reputation or their career. People need to be able to access help at a much earlier stage, much before they become, say, alcohol dependent, because this is not something that's happening only to, I think there's this myth that it's just alcoholics, but actually many of us in the UK are drinking at a level that could put our livers at risk.
Well, Vanessa Hebditch, thank you very much for talking through what are some fairly concerning statistics new out in the UK today. Thank you very much indeed. Director of Communications and Policy at the British Liver Trust.
Somebody said to me once, only drink alcohol when you're happy, never drink it when you're sad.
That's a good
Which
rule.
is great advice. In reality, it's tough.
I've got one where don't drink it alone, only drink it with friends, which I think works quite well. But this 20 pints a week thing, that's less than 3 a day.
That gives you an idea of how much you're drinking if you're shocked about that.
If you go
so
to
do you
the
not
pub,
think 3 pints a day is a lot?
I think if you go to a pub, you can easily get through 3 pints, and that's just sort of
but
normal.
a day?
OK, maybe you don't go to the pub every day, but...
how much does that cost?
Oh, it depends on where in the country you are and if you're going to Wetherspoons or not. But I don't know. I think there is this distinction to be drawn between problem drinkers and people who drink perfectly normally and healthy amounts. And the risk here, as we've seen in Scotland, is what you do is you raise the price of alcohol and that just hits the pockets of people who are dependent.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a dependency
it's not going to stop them
more expensive, you're just going to spend more of your money on it.
Yeah. You said that you'd had some non-alcoholic beer and you couldn't really taste the difference.
No, I quite like
So maybe it is
beer.
psychological.
There's just something satisfying about having a beer at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people in my generation are now buying non-alcoholic beer for, during the week, which is actually cheaper, but also sometimes just as satisfying. If you're only going to have one beer, why do you need it to be alcoholic? But maybe that's just me being incredibly millennial and out of touch with real Britain. I don't know, let me know. gbnews.com/your say.
Next, we are going to cross to Nottingham for more St George's celebrations. I'm sure there's a little bit of alcohol involved there.
On today, it's allowed.
Exactly. Don't go away.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It should brighten up for many northern areas through the rest of the day, but it will remain fairly cloudy in the southeast. That's because a weather front has been pushing along the southeast throughout this morning. That's bringing the cloudier skies. It's a fairly weak feature by the time we get to this afternoon, but it will continue to bring quite a lot of cloud around to many southern areas of England. And in the southeast, that's where we could see some drizzly rain, particularly along the coast. Elsewhere, it should stay dry through this afternoon, and there will be a good deal of sunshine for the north and western areas. Northern Ireland, western Scotland, northwestern Wales as well, seeing highs of 15 or 16 degrees. So in the sheltered sunshine, not bad at all. But if you are exposed to this northerly wind along the east coast, you're certainly going to notice a chill in the air, and there will be quite a bit more cloud around these areas as we lead into tonight as well. That cloud will continue to pull in off the North Sea, keeping skies a little cloudier all along the east coast. We'll continue to see some cloud mainly across parts of Wales, southern England too, but across the northwest, clear skies will lead to another very chilly start. We could be down as low as -4 rurally, so a bit of a patchy frost is expected for western areas Throughout Wednesday, it will be a chilly start, but quite a bright start. There'll be more in the way of sunshine. Still, much of the sunshine will be restricted to western areas of the country and the far north, while the east still have this onshore wind, bringing in more in the way of cloud and the risk of showers and that chillier feel. So temperatures closer to 8 or 9 in the east and closer to 15 in the west.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 10 minutes to 1. Now, we've been discussing a lot about St George's Day, but also about whether or not we should be drinking today. A few people have been getting in touch with their views on it, and there's a wide range. Ross has something to say to me. Typical Gen Z. Drink man, you're British. Well, I have to say I'm not a Gen Z. I was born just before Generation Z, so how dare you?
Well, Paul, you say squeaky clean pipper. Squeaky clean pipper. Oh, trust me, people who know me know that's not the case. People like here are the problem. People like her are the problem with that attitude. 3 beers is nothing. I just reckoned this is what you thought, but when you work it out over the course of the week, to me it seems like a huge amount. But then I'm a wine drinker, not a beer drinker.
But also for women, it's less. It's what is it? It's significantly fewer units than it is for men. So perhaps it would be a lot for you, but not for. Anyway, it's St George's Day today. It's April the 23rd, and communities across the country are gathering to celebrate England's patron saint.
Yeah, red crosses are flying against white backgrounds. Knights are dusting off their chainmail, yet some are asking, who is St George and why should we celebrate him?
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
Come rain or shine, Colin from Colton in Nottingham will celebrate St George's Day. He's been decorating his home with the St George's Cross for 30 years.
It matters because 23rd of April is St George's Day and we're being forgotten about, and we've got to show our identity and show our patriotism.
In the city centre, size matters. England's biggest flag covers Nottingham's council house. It appears every year. Many welcome it, some are indifferent.
I think it's amazing. I do. I think it's absolutely amazing, and it's proud for something in our country.
I think it's really good to see it up there. It's good to see a celebration of England, the country.
It's a flag.
Yeah, don't
I
really.
didn't even realise it was there, if I'm honest with you.
The red cross against white is St George's emblem and the nation's flag.
St George has been celebrated as England's patron saint since the 14th century. But long before English knights wore the red cross over their armour while riding into battle, his story was being told in other parts of the world.
Legend states that George was a dragon-slaying knight. History traces him to modern-day Turkey, a Roman soldier who died defending Christianity. In London, the Royal Society of St George, a patriotic but non-political group, paraded with hundreds of cadets at the weekend. Nick Dutt is chairman.
A lot of our fundamental beliefs and things that we hold dear are being undermined. So I think it's important we come together and celebrate him as a unifying factor.
Here at the cenotaph, England's fallen heroes are honoured alongside the patron saint. Laying a wreath ahead of the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings, D-Day veteran Henry Rice, a proud Englishman aged 98.
We were taught all this. We were so proud just to be English. St George, yeah, he's a great guy, isn't he?
Patriotism is sometimes criticised. English history isn't perfect, but a community of all cultures can cherish St George. Back in Carlton, Colin's raising a different flag with a traditional Anglo-Saxon dragon.
Happy St George Day! Have a great day!
Will Hollis, GB News in Nottingham.
And we're joined by Will now. Will, who are you with?
Yes, well, this is Colin. You just saw him in the package there. One of the most proudly decorated homes in Nottingham, covered in St George's crosses. You've just arrived at the St George's party here in Nottingham. How are you feeling on this special day for you?
Oh, it's fantastic. A great day. Great to see friends, old friends who we don't see very often, but it's great for St George's Day to all gather together and celebrate our patron saint of St George. It's fantastic.
Why did you want to decorate your home in such a way? I know that you've always got St George's cross flying outside of your home, but why did you want to make an even bigger statement this year?
Because we're being forgot about, and our identity is getting pushed to the side, and I just want people to know we are English, we're still here, and we still want to show that we're English and we're proud. And there's nothing wrong with being English, and there's nothing wrong with being proud. And it's not racist to be English.
And what are you going to be doing here today? I see you're going just into the pub. What is it, just a couple of beers with some friends, catching up, or is it just a nice, peaceful time singing the national anthem?
I won't lie to you, we're going to have a few beers, celebrate with all the lads together, and celebrate our great day of St George,
Yeah. Thank you very much. Colin here, outside of the Old Salutation Inn on St George's Day.
Marvellous stuff. Thanks very much, Will. Well, my goodness. It seems that Nottingham might be our most patriotic county today. I was just looking at all those celebrations. Yeah, although we will be back with Stephen and Ellie, who are down in... Is it Kent? It's Kent.
Dartford. Yeah, don't annoy the people of Dartford by saying Nottingham are more patriotic. We're going to start a bit of a ding-dong.
We are, goodness me. Or where are you in a more patriotic area? gbnews.com/your say. Interesting to hear. But this is, of course, Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, Britain's news channel. Much more coming up in the next hour, including the very latest on what on earth is going on with Rwanda.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It should brighten up for many northern areas through the rest of the day, but it will remain fairly cloudy in the southeast. That's because a weather front has been pushing along the southeast throughout this morning. That's bringing the cloudier skies. It's a fairly weak feature by the time we get to this afternoon, but it will continue to bring quite a lot of cloud around to many southern areas of England. And in the southeast, that's where we could see some drizzly rain, particularly along the coast. Elsewhere, it should stay dry through this afternoon, and there will be a good deal of sunshine for the north and western areas. Northern Ireland, western Scotland, northwestern Wales as well, seeing highs of 15 or 16 degrees. So in the sheltered sunshine, not bad at all. But if you are exposed to this northerly wind along the east coast, you're certainly going to notice a chill in the air, and there will be quite a bit more cloud around these areas as we lead into tonight as well. That cloud will continue to pull in off the North Sea, keeping skies a little cloudier all along the east coast. We'll continue to see some cloud mainly across parts of Wales, southern England too, but across the northwest, clear skies will lead to another very chilly start. We could be down as low as -4 rurally, so a bit of a patchy frost is expected for western areas. Throughout Wednesday, it will be a chilly start, but quite a bright start. There'll be more in the way of sunshine. Still, much of the sunshine will be restricted to western areas of the country and the far north, while the east still have this onshore wind bringing in more in the way of cloud and the risk of showers and that chillier feel. So temperatures closer to 8 or 9 in the east and closer to 15 in the west.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the
the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In every corner of the world, people celebrate English tradition and values as members of the Royal Society of St George. Yet here in England, branches are closing as membership dwindles.
I feel that in this country, St George is all but dead and buried.
Until recently, Stephen Warden from Wigston was president of the Leicestershire branch. Despite spending £1,500 of his own money advertising, he couldn't find enough members to keep it running.
I did everything humanly possible to get new members into the branch from the local environment, but they were just not interested in joining.
He thinks changing demographics and declining interest in the Society's values contributed to disappearing membership. But he also blames political leadership at national and local levels. Stephen claims his proposal for a St George's Day parade was repeatedly rejected by Leicester City Council over 10 years. A celebration is planned for St George's Day, but like most cities and towns, no parade will pass through the streets. A Leicester City Council spokesperson said, Leicester's annual celebrations of St George's Day have been organised and funded by the City Council for many decades, and they remain an important part of the city's festival calendar. Some in Leicester say they would like to see more done to celebrate England's patron saint.
I think it's a sign of patriotism. I think it helps the country. We celebrate a lot of religious festivals here.
People forget, I think, what is important to England.
Maybe it's been sort of jumped onto with the wrong crowd, but I think nowadays it's just completely different.
Back in Wigston, St George's Cross flies above Stephen's home.
It makes me feel good because I know at least I've not forgotten St George if everybody else has.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on St George's Day. Yes, it is Monday the 23rd of April.
5 people have died, including a 7-year-old girl, in the Channel just hours after Rishi Sunak's flagship Rwanda bill passed in Parliament. We'll bring you more on that, plus analysis on what happens next with the deportation flights to Kigali.
And in the past hour, Kensington Palace has released an unedited, or so they claim, birthday photo of Prince Louis to mark his 6th birthday. It was taken by his mum.
Well, we're here in Dartford, ready for the St George's Day parade. 700 children, loads and loads of locals, all getting ready to march through the centre of the town.
Yes, the clock is ticking down now. We can hear the children. They're just starting to gather in their papier-mâché dragon masks. It's really going to be a sight.
I think I said it was Monday at the top of the hour. I don't know.
No, I think you said it was Wednesday.
I really don't. Honestly, as everything's upside down today,
confusing.
I can confirm it's Tuesday the 23rd of April, which isn't just St George's Day, but also, Pip, as you mentioned earlier, Shakespeare's birthday too. You can't get more English than that.
And Prince Louis' 6th birthday.
Wow, that's the triumvirate of English icons, isn't it? But the idea of St George being associated with England originally comes from Richard the Lionheart as he went crusading through the Middle East. And that takes us back about 900 years of association with St George and that cross and the English specifically.
And he's also patron saint of a number of other countries as well.
He is. Georgia.
Bulgaria.
Most famously, Malta. But yes, perhaps most significantly England, because for the longest time he's been associated with England, ever since Richard the Lionheart, and then, of course, the Order of the Garter. That was Henry III. Then Henry V at Agincourt. Cry God for
Are we having a history lesson,
Harry
Tom,
and
for the next hour?
No, that's
Good
it.
afternoon,
The
Britain
history's over.
history lesson for you.
History's over.
But happy St George's Day.
Absolutely. And we want to know what you're doing this St George's Day. Do you celebrate? Have you celebrated before? gbnews.com/your say is the way to join the discussion. But not just that, we'll be talking about many other big stories too. We've got a correspondent out following the Prime Minister in his trip after the Rwanda bill passed. All that and more after your news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 1. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your top story this hour. A child is among 5 migrants who've died trying to cross the English Channel after their small boat got into difficulties off the French coast. The incident happened off Wimereux Beach near Boulogne just before 2 a.m. A number of other migrants were rescued, with one now critically ill in hospital. GB News can also reveal that another 3 small boats launched from an area near the site of this morning's tragedy. Latest figures show the number of migrants crossing the Channel has increased by 24% this year. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says it shows that urgent action is needed.
Shows how dangerous these boat crossings are. They put lives at risk and they're undermining our border security. And criminal gangs are making huge profits from these dangerous boats and from putting lives at risk in this way. And that's why we urgently need proper action to tackle these dangerous boat crossings.
This morning's incident comes just hours after the government's flagship Rwanda bill finally passed through Parliament. The Prime Minister called it a landmark law, promising that nothing will stand in the way of flights getting off the ground. The cost of putting each migrant on a plane is expected to reach £11,000, while Rwanda will get £20,000 for each asylum seeker who's relocated there. Illegal Migration Minister Michael Tomlinson says flights will take off within weeks.
I'm keen to see things happening as soon as possible. The Prime Minister set out and made it very clear that it's going to take 10 to 12 weeks for the first flight to actually take off and to get off the ground. But you're right, last night was a momentous occasion. We were told that the bill would never pass, that we'd never get it through, and the Prime Minister was determined to ensure that we got the bill through, and we did that last night. And shortly after midnight, I found myself standing at the bar of the House of Lords and listening to the final speeches there, where they confirmed that the bill was actually going to go through. It's a landmark moment and an important moment for this Rwanda scheme.
In other news, Vladimir Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. That's according to a warning from Rishi Sunak. The Prime Minister arrived in Warsaw a short time ago as Britain pledges its largest ever package of aid for Kyiv, worth £500 million. He says the funding is essential for the defence of Britain and all of Europe against the Russian president's brutal ambitions. Ukraine's President Zelensky welcomed the record military package, which includes long-range missiles, armoured vehicles and boats. Now, crime in rural areas would be tackled as part of a new strategy unveiled by the Labour Party. Research shows that rural crime rates are surging faster than in urban areas. The strategy would see increased police patrols, increased with tougher penalties for thefts and antisocial behaviour. The government dismissed the plan as a toothless tweak around the edges. Sir Keir Starmer says it'll mean communities that have been blighted by organised crime will be better protected. In the US, Donald Trump will appear in court soon for day 2 of the first criminal trial of a former US president. The court has already heard prosecutors claim the former president orchestrated a criminal conspiracy to corrupt the 2016 election. They also argue that payments made to an adult film star, so-called hush money, were in breach of the law. Donald Trump denies any wrongdoing. The case could complicate Mr Trump's path to an election rematch against President Biden. But former Nevada Republican chairwoman Amy Tarkanian says it won't stop his campaign.
He's still campaigning, you better believe it. And even though he has a gag order, which he has a tough time following, he, from what I understand, behaved today inside the courtroom. But as soon as he stepped outside the courtroom, he had addressed to the media and continued to open his mouth and complain once again.
Britain's roads are in a miserable state of disrepair. That's according to the RAC. The company says breakdowns rose by 9% in the last year due to large numbers of potholes. It's led to more than 27,000 call-outs in the year to the end of March. The cost of fixing the problem across England and Wales is estimated at more than £16 billion. And a new photo of Prince Louis has been released by Kensington Palace, marking his 6th birthday. The unedited close-up image shows the young prince lying on a rug on the grass and smiling at the camera. It was taken by his mother at Windsor in the last few days. The family says they're grateful to all those who've wished them well. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Tom and Pip.
Thanks very much, Sophia. Now, good afternoon, Britain. It is 1:08, and our top story this hour. Just hours after the government's flagship Rwanda bill passed in Parliament, 5 people have died whilst attempting to cross the English Channel. Among the dead is a child.
Yeah, she's believed to be just 7 years old. Well, reacting to the incident north of Bologna, Home Secretary James Cleverly said, "These tragedies have to stop. I will not accept a status quo which costs so many lives."
Well, we're joined now by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White for the very latest. And Mark, what more do we know about this tragedy?
Well, the incident unfolded in the early hours of Wimereux, which is north of Boulogne. We're told that a number of boats entered the water. One got into difficulties. Now, some of the reports we're getting is that a number of other migrants who are not supposed to be on that boat, but who, for whatever reason, have not paid the people smugglers, tried to storm that boat, got on that boat, and may have added to the difficulties that boat got into. Now, this is not uncommon. It's been happening increasingly frequently on small boats, where particularly African migrants who don't have the wherewithal, the money to pay these people smugglers, have been adopting a tactic of waiting until the boats get pushed into the water, go offshore, and then they try to storm the boats, run to the boats and force their way on board. So that may well be true, because what is happening now, according to our Kent producer who is down at Dover Harbour, is that the Dover lifeboat, which has come into Dover Harbour with 55 migrants on board. Now, we believe these are migrants who were taken off that small boat at the centre of this tragedy. It continued its journey after those that were on board fell off and were picked up by the rescue services. 5, as we know, died and others taken to hospital. But that boat continued. It was when it got to UK waters, those occupants were picked up by Dover Lifeboat. It is now in Dover Harbour, and as we speak, police officers are searching everyone who comes off that particular boat. So that would lend some credibility to these reports that this may have been a tragedy that was in some way exacerbated by a group of other migrants trying to storm the boat, get onto the boat. It was desperately overcrowded, according to the authorities, as it tried to make its way further into the channel.
Mark, the Prime Minister has said this morning that the incident underscores why a deterrent is needed, why the Rwanda scheme is needed. Other people would look at that in a different way and say, well, actually, doesn't it show that flights aren't going to stop people because they're willing to risk their lives by drowning in the sea? So nothing's going to stop them if they're willing to take that step.
Well, there is certainly a calculation and a determination from those who travel thousands of miles from Africa, from the Middle East, into Europe, across the Mediterranean in many instances, or further up through the Balkans in that route. But they're travelling for many, many months over many thousands of miles with a determination to get to countries like France, Germany, and of course the UK. And there is a calculation, I think, without a doubt, in the minds of migrants that the chance of them actually either being denied their asylum claim or indeed being sent to East Africa, as is the hope of Rishi Sunak now that this policy has passed in Parliament, that the chances of that are relatively small and they will take that risk. It all depends really on what happens when, as Rishi Sunak hopes, the first flights start taking off in the summer. If there is this steady drumbeat, and it is significant numbers that go across. But I can just tell you right now as we speak, in addition to those searches of those coming off that lifeboat, we can confirm that more than 200 small boat migrants have made that illegal journey across the Channel from France so far today in 4 small boats. They've all now arrived at Dover Harbour.
Wow, 50 to a boat. Incredible numbers. Mark White, thank you very much for that latest update. 200 now arrived today. Now, of course, at 8 minutes past midnight, finally, the Rwanda bill passed both houses of Parliament. Here's how Illegal Migration Minister Michael Tomlinson reacted.
The Minister set out and made it very clear that it's going to take 10 to 12 weeks for the first flight to actually take off. It's a landmark moment and an important moment for this Rwanda scheme.
Let's cross live to Westminster to speak to GB News political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, I just want to ask you first of all about something that's come out in the last few minutes. The Prime Minister travelling to Poland, where he's been speaking to journalists on the plane, actually presenting them with cupcakes to celebrate St George's Day. But he refused also to rule out this election being held in July. And where Streeting has also mentioned it in the House of Commons as well.
Yeah, that's right. The PM is making clear that his working assumption, his language, is to have the election in the second half of this year. Now, there are people on the Tory side of the argument who are saying the PM should just put us all out of our misery and say when the election is going to be, but he's choosing not to. So the remarks by the PM on the flight to Poland today will just further fuel the claims, which I don't think are realistic, that they might have the election in June or July. I say that because the PM said yesterday in his press conference he wants to see a regular rhythm of flights taking off to Rwanda. If those flights don't take off until middle of July, and the Labour Party is saying we'll axe a scheme altogether, then you can't have a rhythm with nothing, with no time left before the election. So I think they want to have a few months before the election and also take into account the September budget probably. And even I was chatting with MPs last night, Pip and Tom, and 2 of them said they want to ensure they get paid for 6 more months before the election because many are fearing for their seats.
It's fascinating to see how all of this ties into speculation and sort of political commentary. But fundamentally, what matters here, I suppose, is results. And this 10 to 12 week hiatus, for many people, is deeply confusing.
Yeah, but it comes down to the nature of this legislation. It does allow for individual challenges by individual people being sent to Rwanda, and that's why there's hundreds of judges ready to process these claims very quickly. And this is the point that Robert Jenrick resigned over, the immigration minister, back in December. The fact you can allow individual challenges for all these different individual people being flown to Rwanda is the reason why he was so concerned. Earlier, though, we heard from Yvette Cooper, and it's clear they will axe this scheme even if it proves successful.
The problem with the Rwanda scheme, and bear in mind this was announced 2 years ago. They told us they were implementing this 2 years ago, and they have just kept writing cheques to Rwanda. But the first thing they're going to now do is write another £50 million cheque for Rwanda.
That's Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary. Now, I can tell you that we expect this Safety Rwanda Bill to become law probably on Thursday, and that will be quite important. That will trigger the ratification of the treaty with Rwanda, and at that point, the Home Office can start trying to round up people to put on the flights. The process for them to leave the UK starts probably on Thursday. Tom and Pip.
Important note for the diary. Thursday, royal assent, ratification of the treaty. Well, then a bit of lawyer time. But Chris Hope, thank you very much for joining us, talking through those details. Really important stuff.
We're going to go to Lincolnshire to speak to former Chief Immigration Officer Kevin Saunders. Kevin, very good afternoon. The Prime Minister saying that in light of this tragedy this morning where 5 people, including a 7-year-old girl, died in the Channel, he's saying this underlines the need for the Rwanda scheme, why it will be a deterrent. Do you agree?
I do indeed. We can't have these awful things happening with people dying in the Channel. It's absolutely outrageous that this should happen, and a small child dying is even worse. And from what the reports are, it looks as though migrants fighting amongst migrants was the cause of it as well, which is, it's just unbelievable. So, yes, we need Rwanda. We need to stop the boats coming across. And at the moment, the only game in town is Rwanda. So that's what we've got to go with.
Because Yvette Cooper's... Sorry, Kevin, I just wanted to put to you what Yvette Cooper said, calling it an extortionately expensive gimmick, and that border security should be boosted instead, and that's the way to go about it.
Oh, dear me, I get very upset when I hear this, because realistically, we've been trying to stop people coming across the Channel now for 25 years. We were very successful eventually in my day with the lorries. We managed to virtually stop it all. That is why we now have the boats. And Yvette Cooper comes up with well, I'm afraid her ideas won't work. They just won't work.
It's interesting because the Labour Party has this refrain that all you need to do is smash the criminal gangs. But, I mean, as far as I'm aware, the government has been sending out teams to smash these criminal gangs, seizing depots of equipment as far away as Turkey. But I suppose when you're playing whack-a-mole with these gangs, that's incredibly hard to do at source.
It is virtually impossible. These gangs, as you so rightly say, are sitting in Turkey, enjoying their coffee and making oodles and oodles of money. Now, we can't send a British bobby out to Turkey to arrest them. We need the Turks to actually work with us. And the Turks are saying, well, show me an offence that these people are committing in Turkey and we'll deal with it. But they're not. They're not committing any offence at all in Turkey. Therefore, the Turks are saying, well, you know, what do you want us to do about it? So the idea of us sending British bobbies out to Turkey to deal with it is just nonsense.
Well, Kevin Saunders, thank you for the blunt appraisal that you've given there. It was not perhaps the most cheery assessment, but my goodness, what a big issue we all face. Thank you very much for joining us, former Chief Border Officer, of course.
Well, complete change of gear, because we're going to be going to Kent very shortly for live coverage of the St George's Day parade there. How are you celebrating, or are you celebrating? Let us know. This is Good Afternoon Britain.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In every corner of the world, people celebrate English tradition and values as members of the Royal Society of St George. Yet here in England, branches are closing as membership dwindles.
I feel that in this country, St George is all but dead and buried.
Until recently, Stephen Warden from Wigston was president of the Leicestershire branch. Despite spending £1,500 of his own money advertising, he couldn't find enough members to keep it running.
I did everything humanly possible to get new members into the branch from the local environment, but they were just not interested in joining.
He thinks changing demographics and declining interest in the society's values contributed to disappearing membership. But he also blames political leadership at national and local levels. Stephen claims his proposal for a St George's Day parade was repeatedly rejected by Leicester City Council over 10 years. A celebration is planned for St George's Day, but like most cities and towns, no parade will pass through the streets. A Leicester City Council spokesperson said, Leicester's annual celebrations of St George's Day have been organised and funded by the City Council for many decades, and they remain an important part of the city's festival calendar. Some in Leicester say they would like to see more done to celebrate England's patron saint.
I think it's a sign of patriotism. I think it helps the country. We celebrate a lot of religious festivals here.
People forget, I think, what is important to England.
Maybe it's been sort of jumped onto with the wrong crowd, but I think nowadays it's just completely different.
Back in Wigston, St George's Cross flies above Stephen's home.
It makes me feel good because I know at least I've not forgotten St George if everybody else has.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 24 minutes past 1. Now, earlier we were joined by Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello in Dartford in Kent for their St George's Day parade. Parade, even. Let's go back there. Well, a parade with pride, I suppose, is a parade. But let's go back to Ellie, where it really is kicking off. Ellie, is your parade full of pride?
That it certainly is, Tom and Pip. Really good to see you and happy St George's Day to you. You may need your earplugs if you're out and about in Dartford today. Very, very excited school children. 700 of them from 24 schools will be parading along Dartford High Street very shortly. They're just gathering here at the Civic Centre behind me. It is a wonderful sight with so much excitement and national pride for the young people of Dartford. It's wonderful to see. I'm joined by the Tory MP for Dartford, Gareth Johnson, who's with me now. Really good to see you today. And what can we see behind us? Because it is really just the most wonderful sight, isn't it?
It is a wonderful sight. We've got hundreds of school children from right across Dartford who've come here to celebrate our National Day, St George's Day. You know, this is a great opportunity for the whole community to come together, as we do for so many different events, not just St George's Day, we do it for Diwali, for Eid, for everything. Dartfordians don't need much to come together and celebrate. So, you know, it's great to actually celebrate our National Day, and we're celebrating with pride today in Dartford.
Oh, that you certainly are. For those listening on the radio now, we can see the red roses of England, can't we? We can see a huge papier-mâché St George, who is currently going up and down the lines of children. What else can we see in this crowd?
There's hundreds, literally hundreds of St George's flags, people with red roses, people just celebrating Englishness, which is a wonderful thing to do. You know, too often people hold back a little bit, I think, on this kind of thing, but no, you know, we're unashamed in Dartford. We actually will celebrate this full-heartedly. You know, it brings everybody together, celebrating our National Day. And look at the weather; it's very typical English weather as well. You know, cloudy with a spot of rain, but that's not going to hold us back. You know, we are really going to celebrate this in full style.
It certainly is the most English weather today. As you say, cloudy with a touch of rain. What does this mean for a town like Dartford? And what does it mean for local businesses? Because it is so busy in town. We've got talking about the school kids here that are gathered, but there's so much happening in the town centre as well, isn't there, today?
There is. I mean, if you go down to the high street in Dartford, we've got St George's flags everywhere. We're going to congregate in the park. You know, this is a wonderful opportunity actually for the community to come together and celebrate something that we can all unite behind. And that's great for sort of local neighbourly feeling. It's really good for the school children, I think, to have a sense of national pride as well. For all those reasons, this is a really, really good event to have. These children will remember this for the rest of their life, and they'll remember that actually you can take pride in being English, in being British, and that's something actually that we should take give a lot of credit to the children for.
Yeah, and you can see how much fun they're having. I mean, they're laughing, they're so excited to be here, aren't they? It's such a lovely lesson to instil in them. Yes. So young.
That's right. At the end of the day, they're just going to have a fun day today. They're going to enjoy it, and that's the really good thing about this. You know, it's about community. Yes, there's values there as well, but you can hear the noise behind me. You know, they are excited. They can't wait to get the parade started and get down to Dartford Town Centre and into the park.
This is such a wonderful event that you've done every single year since you've been a Tory MP since 2010. Do you think this should be a public holiday? Is this something that we should all be experiencing, the fun and the pride of St George's Day?
I think it's a really good case for having either St George's Day or the Monarch's birthday as a national day instead of maybe one of the other sort of more controversial public holidays that we have. You know, I think most important of it all, though, I think we should celebrate St George's Day, a national day. Every other country in the world pretty much has a national day where they take pride in who they are and their identity. England should be no different to that.
And just before we let you go, I couldn't help but spot your badge here. I don't know if we can come in, Ollie, and see this badge. Love England, love Dartford.
That's right, in both equal measures.
Oh, wonderful. And you've got your flag as well. Very good. And you're going to be waving that proudly.
Yeah, absolutely. English and British and proud of it.
Oh, wonderful, Gareth. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Well, Tom and Pip, let's hope that the clouds stay away for us. It is, as you say, the most English day in terms of weather today, and so much English pride behind us with these wonderful school children.
We wouldn't have it any other way. Ellie Costello, thank you very much for bringing us that. It's such a joy to see all those roses and indeed the very English papier-mâché that is there. Of course, a grand English word.
Well, there were St George's Day cupcakes on the plane for journalists who flew with the Prime Minister to Poland a little earlier today. He went with Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps. They're welcomed by the Defence Attaché to the British Embassy in Poland. And Rishi Sunak is expected to announce this £500 million boost for Ukraine and its largest ever provision of vital munitions. He's going to be meeting Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk to discuss deepening UK-Poland relations. He's already made this big announcement, hasn't he, this £500 million? That came out earlier.
If you're watching on television, you might be able to recognise one of those journalists around the Prime Minister in the plane there. Our very own Catherine Forster.
Where is she?
Lift. She was in that first photograph that we saw. I don't know if we can run it all again. We'll see if we can. But she has, of course, travelled along with the Prime Minister to Poland this very afternoon. We're going to see if we can speak to her.
Did she get a cupcake?
A little bit later. These are
most
vital
important
questions.
question. Did she get a St George's Day? There we are.
There are the cupcakes.
Oh, those look scrumptious, don't they?
And there's the Prime Minister in a white shirt and a red tie, the almost mandatory uniform for any man here on St George's Day. But I do hear that our very own Catherine Forster has spoken to the Prime Minister. She's asked him a couple of questions, including something about St George's Day and whether or not it should be a bank holiday. So we'll catch up with her after news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Thanks, Tom. It's 1:30. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your headlines. Rishi Sunak is warning that Vladimir Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. The Prime Minister arrived in Warsaw a short time ago as Britain pledges its largest ever package of aid for Kyiv, worth £500 million. He's due to meet the leaders of Poland, Germany and NATO, warning that the defence of Ukraine is essential to British and European security. Ukraine's President Zelensky welcomed the record military package, which includes long-range missiles, armoured vehicles and boats. A child is among 5 migrants who died trying to cross the English Channel after their small boat got into difficulties off the French coast. The incident happened off Wimereux Beach near Boulogne just before 2 a.m. We understand that another 3 small boats launched from an area near the site of the tragedy this morning. Latest figures show the number of migrants crossing the Channel has increased by 24% this year. Now, the Prime Minister says nothing will stand in the way of flights getting off the ground after the Rwanda bill finally passed through Parliament last night. The cost of putting each migrant on a plane is expected to reach £11,000, while Rwanda will get £20,000 for each asylum seeker who's relocated there. And crime in rural areas would be tackled as part of a new strategy unveiled by the Labour Party. Research shows that rural crime rates are surging faster than in urban areas. The plan would see increased police patrols with tougher penalties for thefts and antisocial behaviour. The government dismissed it as a toothless tweak around the edges, but Sir Keir Starmer says it'll mean communities are better protected. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2400 and €1.1619. The price of gold is £1,860 and 17 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,022 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Beverley firstly in East Yorkshire for this update on the A164. Now, it's currently blocked between the Driffield Road roundabout in Beverley and Dray Drive in Leconfield. That is due to a collision. It's causing delays. Hope in Shropshire between there and Plockscreen. The A488 is shut both ways. No way through. There's a fallen tree causing queues. Northbound M42 in Worcestershire. Redditch at 3 up towards the M40. 3A part blocked. Queues building. There's a breakdown there causing those delays. On the northbound M5 in Gloucestershire, just around Tewkesbury at junction 9, the inside lane closed at the start of the exit slip there. A lorry undergoing a tyre change. And the westbound M4 towards Swansea at Llansamned 44, the outside lane closed off there on the exit slip for emergency barrier repairs. And that's your latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It should brighten up for many northern areas through the rest of the day, but it will remain fairly cloudy in the southeast. That's because a weather front has been pushing along the southeast throughout this morning. That's bringing the cloudier skies. It's a fairly weak feature by the time we get to this afternoon, but it will continue to bring quite a lot of cloud around to many southern areas of England. And in the southeast, that's where we could see some drizzly rain, particularly along the coast. Elsewhere, it should stay dry through this afternoon, and there will be a good deal of sunshine for the north and western areas. Northern Ireland, western Scotland, northwestern Wales as well, seeing highs of 15 or 16 degrees. So in the sheltered sunshine, not bad at all. But if you are exposed to this northerly wind along the east coast, you're certainly going to notice a chill in the air, and there will be quite a bit more cloud around these areas as we lead into tonight as well. That cloud will continue to pull in off the North Sea, keeping skies a little cloudier all along the east coast. We'll continue to see some cloud mainly across parts of Wales, southern England too, but across the northwest, clear skies will lead to another very chilly start. We could be down as low as -4 rurally, so a bit of a patchy frost is expected for western areas. Throughout Wednesday, it will be a chilly start, but quite a bright start. There'll be more in the way of sunshine, but still much of the sunshine will be restricted to western areas of the country and the far north, while the east still have this onshore wind bringing in more in the way of cloud and the risk of showers and that chillier feel. So temperatures closer to 8 or 9 in the east and closer to 15 in the west.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 36 minutes past 1. Now, in the past hour, we've had a royal photo released. Yes, GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker has the story, and he joins us now. Cameron.
Hi, Tom. Yes, Kensington Palace has released a new photograph to mark Prince Louis's 6th birthday. Prince Louis is the youngest son of the Prince and Princess of Wales. The photograph was taken a couple of days ago in the grounds of Windsor Castle. You see him there lying on a rug wearing a shirt there. It's a really lovely photograph, but it is also unedited, royal sources have made clear. Remember, we had a little bit of a scandal when it came to the Mother's Day photograph from last month where the princess and her 3 children were pictured. Photo agencies killed the image because it had apparently been manipulated. The other thing to say about this photograph is it wasn't released in the usual way. What usually happens for one of the royal children's birthdays is the photograph is released the day before, so the papers can print it on their front pages the following day. I understand that initially, if you remember, following the Princess of Wales's cancer diagnosis, she asked for privacy for her and her family while she undergoes preventative chemotherapy. She is still having preventative chemotherapy at the moment, but it's thought, on balance, it's understood that the Prince and Princess wanted to thank the public directly for the birthday well wishes they've received for Prince Louis over the last, today. So they directly released an image on their social media channels, unedited, for the public to see. It's also understood that when Princess Charlotte's birthday comes around next month, a very similar thing will happen. So a celebratory photograph to mark Prince Louis's 6th birthday from the Prince and Princess of Wales. And I should add that it was the princess herself who took the image.
Of course, Princess Catherine has been in hot water for releasing images herself, as you alluded to there, Cameron. What reassurances have you been given that this is a completely unedited photograph?
Well, you see the photograph off your screen there of the Mother's Day photograph, where there were a few little bits of manipulation on the image, including perhaps missing fingers. Princess Charlotte's sleeve was also slightly off, as well as the Princess of Wales's zip. Nothing like that in this photograph. It's not been airbrushed. It is just a single shot of Prince Louis lying on the grass. Royal sources have assured me that this photograph has not been edited. I think we can believe them, to be honest. Let's not get into conspiracy theories here. And the whole point of this photograph is to celebrate Prince Louis's birthday. There's kind of this unwritten rule between the royal household and the general public that in exchange for privacy for the royal children as they grow up, as is clearly their right, and the Prince and Princess of Wales have the right to protect their children from the eyes of the media and indeed the general public, they have decided to release every year a photograph on their birthday. And we see them sporadically throughout the year as well, the royal children. So this is just keeping up with the tradition, but in a slightly more modern way, using their own social media channels to give the public the image.
And let's just talk about little Prince Louis, because he is a little tinker, isn't he, Cameron? Yeah. And he's very quickly become a firm favourite amongst royal watchers, because he's always up to a little bit of naughtiness that seems to get captured by the photographers.
Yes, and Queen Camilla told a member of the public last month that Prince Louis can be, and I quote, quite a handful. And I think we have seen that perhaps through the public engagements and ceremonial events that have happened with the royal family over the last few years, most notably the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee, where he had a little bit of a tantrum in the royal box during the pageant, and Kate very professionally calmed him down a little bit, him putting his hands over his ears during the royal fly-past for that Jubilee service as well. And he had a little bit of a go pretending to be a motorbike driver on the balcony of Buckingham Palace during the coronation celebrations or trooping the colour last year, one of the two. So he has been known to have a little bit of a cheeky streak in him. I think the general public love him for it, and royal watchers alike.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. Well, Cameron Walker, thank you very much for bringing us that latest photograph and the information surrounding it. Good to know that it's that the royal family have returned to sort of non-photoshopped images there.
Happy birthday to Prince Louis.
Yes, sharing it, of course, with... but it's not St George's birthday. It's the day that we think St George died. It's the day that we celebrate his martyrdom, I suppose. That's the whole...
And we're also celebrating William Shakespeare.
Yes, which is his... It's registered as the day he died and the day he was born,
exactly,
the 23rd of April. But stay with us, Because we're hoping to cross to Warsaw next, where the Prime Minister has arrived ahead of this announcement of the largest ever amount of military aid to Ukraine. Our correspondent Catherine Forster has been travelling with him on the plane. She's even asked him about a new bank holiday. Well, we'll get the answers very soon. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Cheryl Baker. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
When you think back to 1981, I mean, obviously the ABBA victory then wasn't all that long ago, 9 years earlier. Do you think they had a huge influence then on the sort of direction that Eurovision was taking?
Yeah, they did. They changed it completely. Because up to then, it had all been very staid and a bit posh, long frock, sticky bow ties, you know. And then they came along and they blew it out of the water. They looked so different. And they modernised it. And I think, yeah, it made a big change. Made a big change after that.
And we were watching your performance on Eurovision a little bit earlier on of making your mind up. I mean, you had so much fun, didn't you, up on that stage? Were you, in some part, inspired by ABBA?
Yes, I would say so. It was, ABBA was 74. I turned professional in 75 and did my first song for Europe, which was, you know, when they choose the British song to go forward. I did my first one in February 1976. So, yeah, it was only months after ABBA's performance that I started my own Eurovision journey. Yeah, they just changed the face of it. They changed the face of Eurovision. And if you look at what Eurovision is now, I think that all started with ABBA's performance. It made people think this is much more than just a song contest. It's all about the look. I mean, the clothes, they looked fantastic. And even the composer, or not the composer, what's he called? The conductor. He was dressed as Napoleon. It made it fun. Fantastic song, obviously, brilliant singing, but the whole look of it just changed the way that Eurovision is, and to this day.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's Channel.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is coming up to 1:45, and the former United States President Donald Trump is back in court today, facing charges of falsifying business records to conceal hush money payments that were made to a porn star.
Just moments ago, he left Trump Tower and gave his usual wave.
His hair's waving there too.
It is a little bit, must be breezy in New York. He is, we are told now, in his car making his way to court. Although I think it was supposed to start at 1:30 our time. So we'll bring you the latest pictures as soon as we get them. And there they are. That is the courthouse in New York where the former US president is due any minute now.
And a very famous long corridor where I remember the first time we saw this corridor and we were just staring at that door, waiting for him to come out. And then there was this sort of ominous Star Wars-like walk. You could just imagine the music playing in the background as he's sort of walking towards the cameras, stops, and then makes his big statement. And he's been making one of these quite political speeches each day that the court has been in session.
But it's interesting today, day 2, because the judge is going to be deciding whether he should be punished for violating a gag order which prevents him from criticising witnesses and others involved in the case. And prosecutors want the judge to fine him for criticising porn star Stormy Daniels and his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, both of whom are expected to testify. Now, the judge could opt to fine him $1,000 for each violation. Or...
how many violations are there? That would be... Because I just think to a billionaire, $1,000 must not be a particularly large amount of money.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. But also, I think technically the judge could also jail him for a few days.
Oh.
That would be a moment,
very
wouldn't
dramatic.
it?
But isn't this precisely what the prosecution wanted? If you're going to put a gag order on anyone, putting a gag order on Donald Trump, not a man known for being perhaps understated in how he puts across his case, they were just hoping that he'd walk into this sort of thing. It does seem like this does, to some extent, feed into this narrative, some sort of trivial things around what is widely considered by political commentators in the States to be the least serious of all of the charges that he's facing, this New York hush money case. Much less serious than the case in Georgia, for example. It does seem that it does feed into his narrative a little bit, that this is all politicised.
But if he keeps violating the gag order, I've just found the information here, the judge can send him to jail for up to 30 days.
Ooh.
So that would be quite a twist. For his part, Donald Trump says this gag order is a violation of free speech. So we'll see if he keeps saying it.
Fascinated about what I can see a world in which Donald Trump being put behind bars for a month in the middle of campaigning. Can you imagine what his surrogates would be saying on the television? Saying, look, this is Biden locking up his political opponents.
It would deepen his support, wouldn't it? Surely.
When he got his mugshot taken, that got turned into T-shirts.
Yes.
He sold that
Car
as
bumper
campaign
stickers.
merchandise. I can't imagine, actually, weirdly, I can't imagine Donald Trump being sent to prison for 30 days. Doing him any harm. Famously, he once said in the 2016 election...
Sorry, Tom, I'm just looking at the pictures there. I thought I saw a bit of movement, but it's...
glued to that door.
No, that's clearly not Trump, because he's in a shirt and short-sleeve shirt.
No, we don't see the long red tie. Maybe Donald Trump's wearing a red tie today in support
in honour of
St George's Day. I would have thought so. Although, no, he's not English. He's, of course, got Scottish ancestry. But I do think it is... very curious how, in 2016, of course, Donald Trump said that he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and his numbers wouldn't go down. We're really finding now, in 2024, that theory, I suppose metaphorically, being put to the test. Just how far can things go with his support hardening and still behind him? Yeah. Well, we're looking now at that corridor. As soon as Donald Trump does step out there and make some noise, we will bring it to you. It doesn't look like there's a flurry of activity there.
Exactly. So he must... maybe they're running into court now and he's bringing up the rear. But yesterday he told reporters that the trial is election interference. His attorney attacked the proceedings, calling it an affront to the American Constitution. It's hard, because we don't want to cut away from the pictures, because the minute we do, he might walk through the doors.
I think we should stay on this, because I think there is a lot more that we can say about what is going on in the United States right now, because the polls actually aren't particularly wide. There was a widening. There's been a narrowing now, but crucially, in some of these swing states, Donald Trump is pretty far ahead. I think marginally, most psephologists, those who study elections, say it's sort of his to lose, which is remarkable considering what's going on.
But the other school of thought is that if he does get convicted, he's done for. So it's an interesting one. But listen, we'll come straight back to those pictures, but we want to show you also our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, arriving in Poland very, very recently, moments ago. Here he is coming off the plane with Defence Secretary Grant Shapps.
And it
I
looked
think
like he was with the Chancellor
Jeremy
as well.
Hunt looked like he was with him
Yes,
as well.
but here he is with Donald Tusk, the new Prime Minister of Poland, of course, formerly President of the European Council. So a big EU voice there, recently won the Polish elections.
Well, Donald Tusk is, of course, known during the Brexit days.
Yes.
He became quite famous and infamous for some.
But now, of course, President of a member state. Prime Minister, I should say, of a member state of the EU rather than of the institution itself. It has to be said that he, as Prime Minister of Poland, has been talking tough on migration. He has perhaps been pushing back a little bit against the EU plan to sort of pool refugees and all of that sort of thing. So perhaps he's becoming a little bit more, I don't know, populist in his new role as Prime Minister. Perhaps you have to.
And with them there is the NATO Secretary-General, isn't it?
Yes, Jens Stoltenberg.
So Rishi Sunak holding talks with both of them. And, of course, this comes on the day that he has announced £500 million of UK military aid for Ukraine, which the Ukrainian president has, of course, welcomed. It will be spent, well, very much on air defence. That will be a main part of the spending, along with armoured vehicles, small arms, ammunition. A lot of money.
Although comparing it to the tens of billions of dollars that the United States has just approved to go to Ukraine, not quite as much as the United States is giving. But then again, as a proportion of the economy, still quite a large deal. Of course, it all sort of pales into significance when you compare the other large amounts of spending that the UK government puts out. This is, of course, if you have to compare the amount of money we're spending on the EU compared to the amount of money on Ukraine compared to the amount of money we used to spend on the EU, that was about £20 billion a year. This, £500 million. But, you know, there will be big debates over whether this is money well spent and what it is actually getting in return.
Yeah, and the Prime Minister has also been stressing the importance of Europeans investing in their own security and NATO countries reaching their 2% defence spending commitment. Because there are calls for our spending commitment to be 3% by 2030.
Ironically, the next stop on the Prime Minister's visit is, of course, Berlin. He'll be talking to Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, who is calling for the UK to raise defence spending. But that from Germany, a country that has not met its 2% target for years and years and years and years, only has just recently met its 2% target. I think it's a bit rich for the Germans to lecture the Brits, who've never missed our NATO target on spending. A bit rich for Olaf Scholz to say, oh, Brits, you need to up your spending. But we've never
I wonder if that's what Rishi Sunak will say to Olaf.
I hope
it's a bit rich, Olaf.
I hope he says that. But, of course, that's tomorrow's visit. Today, it's Poland. This is the two-day foreign visit of the Prime Minister. But we'll get more on that, and as soon as Donald Trump walks down that ominous corridor, we'll bring you that too. But before all of that, let's get the weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It should stay dry for most of us through the rest of the day and into tonight. And the best of the sunshine will be to the north and west. That's because we've got a large area of high pressure sat to the northwest of the UK, bringing that drier and brighter weather. In the south and east, though, we've still got this weather front to clear through the next few hours. So risk of some drizzly rain across parts of Kent. Then that will be followed by a northerly wind that should bring some showers, particularly to eastern areas of England, the coastal areas in particular. And that will also bring quite a lot of cloud along these coastal areas. Further north and west, though, it will be a clear night. And here is where it could turn quite cold across parts of rural Scotland. Could be down as low as -4. The frost will be fairly patchy. That does develop, and it should clear quite quickly as the sun does come up quite quickly as well. And it will feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine by the afternoon if you are sheltered from the wind in the north and west, particularly parts of South Wales, southwestern parts of Scotland. We could see temperatures towards the mid-teens. But in the east, it'll be quite a different feel, still similar to how it has been recently. That northerly wind keeping temperatures below double digits for some areas in northeastern areas of England. It'll be a very cold start to Thursday, and then we see an area of low pressure out in the North Sea bring this band of cloud and rain across northern areas of England, parts of Scotland as well. And then it does look like it will turn a little bit more unsettled from the south and west into the weekend, but it turns a little bit warmer.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 23rd of April.
5 people, including a 7-year-old girl, have died attempting to cross the Channel to the UK just hours after Rishi Sunak's flagship Rwanda bill passed in Parliament. We'll bring you more on that, plus analysis on what happens next with the deportation flights to Kigali.
And the Prime Minister has arrived in Poland. He's expected to announce the largest military aid package to Ukraine. But also, the Germans are asking the UK spend more on our own army. We'll be crossing live for more details.
Fluid justice. Pubs, libraries and church halls should be used as pop-up courts, apparently, as a way of clearing the backlog in criminal cases. That's the claim from a High Court judge. We'll be getting reaction from a publican.
Yes, GB News is celebrating St George's Day with the nation. We're here in Dartford and so many school children who've just been parading through the streets with national pride.
Oh, it's been fantastic. So many kids showing so much excitement. We'll bring you all the very latest.
Now, we're still waiting for Donald Trump to walk down that corridor of doom at the New York courthouse. And indeed, we're anticipating talking to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, live from Poland as well. So there's a lot to come this hour in terms of live events on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah, the judge overseeing Donald Trump's hush money trial is going to decide whether he should be punished for violating a gag order that prevents him from criticising witnesses and others involved in the case. And technically, he could be sentenced to 30 days in jail. So that would put a whole new twist, a whole new other twist on everything that's going on with the upcoming US presidential election.
I just can't help but think he would revel in that. That he would say that his First Amendment free speech rights are being breached, that this is a new sort of tyranny, that political opponents are locking up political opponents. You can just imagine how it can be painted as almost the perfect backdrop to the sort of narrative that Donald Trump is trying to build.
And only served to deepen his support ahead of that election, which is, what, 6 months away, 7 months away? Not long at all. So we're going to be bringing you those live pictures. And as Tom says, we're also live with Rishi Sunak. And we'll be talking to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who is with him. Let's bring you a roundup of all the latest headlines now with Sophia.
Thanks, Pip. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 2. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your top story this hour. Rishi Sunak is warning that Vladimir Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. The Prime Minister arrived in Warsaw a short time ago as Britain pledges its largest ever package of aid for Kyiv, worth £500 million. He's due to meet the leaders of Poland, Germany and NATO, warning that the defence of Ukraine is essential to British and European security. Ukraine's President Zelensky welcomed the record military package, which includes long-range missiles, armoured vehicles and boats. Senior figures from the United Nations and the Council of Europe have criticised the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, warning that it sets a worrying precedent. The Prime Minister says nothing will stand in the way of flights getting off the ground after the bill finally passed through Parliament late last night. But officials at the UN say it breaches the Refugee Convention and seriously hinders the rule of law by reducing the ability of British courts to scrutinise removal decisions. The European Court of Human Rights blocked deportation flights to Rwanda in 2022, but Mr Sunak insists that won't happen again. A child is among 5 migrants who died trying to cross the English Channel after their small boat got into difficulties off the French coast. The incident happened just off Wirmo Beach near Boulogne before 2 a.m. A number of other migrants were rescued, with one now critically ill in hospital. GB News can also reveal that another 3 small boats launched from an area near the site of this morning's tragedy. Latest figures show the number of migrants crossing the Channel was increased by 24% this year. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says it shows that urgent action is needed.
Shows how dangerous these boat crossings are. They put lives at risk and they are undermining our border security. And criminal gangs are making huge profits from these dangerous boats and from putting lives at risk in this way. And that's why we urgently need proper action to tackle these dangerous boat crossings.
Now, crime in rural areas will be tackled as part of a new strategy unveiled by the Labour Party. Research shows that rural crime rates are surging faster than in urban areas. The strategy would see increased police patrols with tougher penalties for thefts and antisocial behaviour. The government dismissed the plan as a toothless tweak around the edges, Sir Keir Starmer says it'll mean communities that have been blighted by organised crime will be better protected. The Home Secretary is travelling to Italy for discussions on curbing illegal migration. James Cleverly says Italy is one of Britain's most crucial partners in tackling the shared challenge. He'll visit the Coast Guard in Rome and discuss efforts to stem illegal arrivals from North Africa. He'll also become Britain's first government minister to visit Lampedusa, where around 110,000 migrants landed last year. In the US, Donald Trump will appear in court soon for day 2 of the first criminal trial of a former US president. The court has already heard prosecutors claim the former president orchestrated a criminal conspiracy to corrupt the 2016 election. They also argue that payments made to an adult film star, so-called hush money, were in breach of the law. Donald Trump denies any wrongdoing. The case could complicate his path to a rematch against President Biden ahead of November's election. Britain's roads are in a miserable state of disrepair. That's according to the RAC. The company says breakdowns rose by 9% in the last year due to large numbers of potholes. It's led to more than 27,000 call-outs in the year to the end of March. The cost of fixing the problem across England and Wales is estimated at more than £16 billion. And a new photo of Prince Louis has been released by Kensington Palace, marking his 6th birthday. The unedited close-up image shows the young prince lying on a rug on the grass and smiling at the camera. It was taken by his mother at Windsor in the last few days. The family says they're grateful to all those who've wished them well. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Tom and Pip.
Thanks, Sophia. Now, welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain here on GB News.
Our top story this hour, just hours after the government's flagship Rwanda bill passed in Parliament, 5 people, including a 7-year-old girl, have died while attempting to cross the English Channel.
Well, reacting to the incident, Home Secretary James Cleverly said, "These tragedies have to stop. I will not accept a status quo which costs so many lives."
We're joined by GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White, who can bring us the very latest. Mark, obviously bring us up to date with this tragedy, but also how busy the channel is today with people trying to cross.
Well, indeed, that's a very good point, because clearly this tragedy, coupled with the passing of the Rwanda bill, has done nothing to deter these small boat crossings. We can confirm that 210 channel migrants have made that illegal crossing of the English Channel today and have now arrived at Dover Harbour in 3 Border Force vessels and an RNLI Dover lifeboat, and 1 more boat, we're told, is currently out there in the Channel trying to make it to UK waters, still in French waters, with a bit to go, we're told, but trying to make it towards that point where they know it is routine that once they get into UK waters, because of British authorities say the precarious nature of the fact that they are on overcrowded boats, they intervene and they pick them up and then they're taken to Dover Harbour. It's very controversial, but that is the process that we see played out day in, day out when the weather allows in the Channel. And investigations are underway into this tragedy that unfolded in Wimereux, which is just north of Boulogne, in the early hours of this morning. A small boat that was vastly overcrowded got into difficulties just as it had pushed off from the beach. It was only a few hundred metres out from the beach when a number of migrants ended up in the water. There was a huge search and rescue operation involving 3 rescue helicopters and multiple search and rescue and border patrol vessels from France. 5 people we now know have died, including 3 men, a woman and a young girl. Investigations are underway, and we understand into suggestions that a group of migrants who hadn't paid for that journey. They hadn't paid the criminal gangs, had tried to rush the boat, get on board that boat, and added to just how overcrowded it was, and may have exacerbated the end result here, this tragedy.
It's really concerning to see that this is still going on. Of course, the government passed its bill last night. It passed the House of Lords at 8 minutes past midnight with the intent of stopping tragedies like this. But I suppose it does need what the Prime Minister set out yesterday in his address to the nation, that regular rhythm of flights, before we can know if it's effective or not.
Yeah, we've got to acknowledge that despite the bill having passed, and that clearly is a symbolic milestone, as well as the actual power that the government needs, they say, to be able to get these boats or the people from these boats into planes and off to Rwanda. We have to acknowledge that the first of those flights hasn't even left yet, and it's likely to be the summer. So until that actually happens, then perhaps the deterrent effect as such won't kick in. But much will depend on just how many people are on these flights. If it is just a trickle of flights, even though they may be regular, if they don't account for the majority, if not all of the people coming across the channel in a set period of time, then it's hard to see what the deterrent factor will be, because there will be a calculation in the minds of the migrants that if the chances of not being sent to Rwanda are, fairly high. In other words, there's maybe a 10-20% chance you're going to be sent, then you're probably going to take that risk and continue coming.
Well, Mark White, thank you very much for bringing us the very latest there from the channel, and indeed from the reaction, really, to what could be a very transformative piece of legislation.
So, after all that ping-pong between the Lords and the Commons, the Rwanda bill, as Tom said, passed overnight just after midnight. And this is how Illegal Migration Minister Michael Tomlinson reacted.
The Minister set out and made it very clear that it's going to take 10 to 12 weeks for the first flight to actually take off. It's a landmark moment and an important moment for this Rwanda scheme.
But the opposition, Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, said this morning that things weren't quite so rosy. Here's her reaction.
The problem with the Rwanda scheme, and bear in mind this was announced 2 years ago. They told us they were implementing this 2 years ago, and they have just kept writing cheques to Rwanda. But the first thing they're going to now do is write another £50 million cheque for Rwanda.
Well, let's cross live to Westminster to speak to GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope. Hello, Christopher. So 12 weeks, we're told, before these flights can take off. But there are people who still believe this scheme is going to get bogged down in the courts again. Are they right?
Well, they could be right, and that's the worry for the Prime Minister. People like the IPPR, the think tank, warning there will be individual claims against this legislation. This is what Robert Jenrick, the former immigration minister, resigned from that role, number 2 to Suella Braverman in the Home Office, of course. He resigned over this very point, that there could be individual claims which could tie the whole thing down in legal red tape, like Lilliput, tying down some kind of giant, stopping these moves to remove migrants from the UK to Rwanda. That's the big worry, I think, that it gets bogged down. That the PM has said he's got hundreds of judges ready to take cases in short order, get them out of the country, but it'll be 10 to 12 weeks before this happens. That'll be mid to end of July, some time away, definitely missing his spring deadline, and getting dangerously near when the next election could be. Even on the flight over to Poland, he's not denying, is he, the Prime Minister, there'll be an election at some point in the second half of this year. Well, the second half of this year starts at the beginning of July, but would he really want to have an election before his Rwanda plan has even got a plane off the ground, knowing that Labour will wreck it and axe it? I don't think so. I still think there'll be a November election, probably with a budget in September to cut taxes, as the Tories hope something else might come up to boost them in the polls.
Well, let's hope that if the Lilliputians do tie down the Gulliver of this legislation, it springs back up, as in the novel. But Christopher, What is it exactly that we're going to see happen from now? 12 weeks away takes us to July.
Yes.
What is the Prime Minister expecting to happen? And what does a regular rhythm of flights actually look like?
What it looks like, Tom, is you, me and Pippa don't talk about it anymore. What they want is this whole story to be off the news and to be a regular thing happening in government, that yet, hundreds of people are taking off from an airport somewhere in the south of England, I imagine, flying to Rwanda, where they'll be processed and probably stay there. That's what the government wants to happen, that we don't even talk about it. Perhaps in the same way we can say how many are arriving, we say how many are leaving in the same breath. Mark White might take over covering this away from politics. That's what the government wants, but until then, it's highly divisive. The PM has staked his political credibility on getting these flights off the ground, of literally stopping the boats, not reducing them or the numbers of crossing by 50% or 75%, stopping the boats. And that's why it is so important. This week, coming up, Thursday, we expect the King will give royal assent to the Safety of Rwanda bill. That will mean that the treaty signed by James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, with Rwanda will come into force. And at that point, the government can start trying to get names together, find people to put on the first flights. That first flight will be an important milestone for the Prime Minister. He will be hoping it happens as soon as possible, but he's warning it could be 10 to 12 weeks. And then there's a whole battle through courts. And what I'm told by people who know about courts and judges is the PM's problem is he's losing control of the timeline. Once judges get involved and lawyers get involved, politics is pushed to the background and their timescale is their own. And that means that the PM's political future is not in his control.
Well, Christopher Hope, thank you very much for bringing us the very latest there. Let's get some more now with the director of the Africa programme at Chatham House, Dr Alex Vines, because, Dr Vines, many people have different views on where Rwanda is as a country. Is it a dreadful dictatorship that has no human rights, or is it this wonderful panacea of growth and economic opportunity in Africa? Or perhaps is it somewhere in between?
Oh, definitely it's in between. So it's an authoritarian country, and you couldn't have a debate like you have on GB News about politics in Rwanda. But it does have impressive economic growth. It is a secure country if you abstain from politics. And so the reality isn't what Andrew Mitchell was depicting yesterday, that it's a lot better living in Kigali than London. But it's by far not a basket case or a dangerous place. It's a lovely place to visit if you're on holiday, for example.
And do we know how many people Rwanda is prepared to take? How prepared are they?
Oh, they are prepared. This is a good deal for Rwanda. It also builds in British government support diplomatically for Rwanda for a number of things. Remember, Rwanda is a East African landlocked country. It is a poor country. It is developing. It aspires to become middle income. And so the Rwanda bill and this partnership with the United Kingdom is an important one for Rwanda. President Kagame of Rwanda has very actively solicited multiple international partnerships, of which the United Kingdom is a key part of that.
Yes, it is interesting to note the second half of the title of the treaty that we've signed with Rwanda. It's not just the migration treaty, it's the migration and economic development treaty. These two things going hand in hand, greater trade ties, greater ties between the United Kingdom and Rwanda diplomatically, but also helping that sort of investment that might well turn into one of our key allies in the region.
Yeah, the partnership with Rwanda and the United Kingdom government is strong. There's a very strong personal relationship between the British Minister for Africa, Andrew Mitchell, and President Kagame. But, you know, if there was a change of government, there's very good relationships with Labour Party. The relationship between Tony Blair and Paul Kagame is very, very close too. So this transcends.
And yet the Labour Party is saying they would scrap the Rwanda scheme. Frankly, they would wipe... Actually, this is a point that I don't think anyone's raised before. How would they scrap the scheme if they couldn't just unilaterally withdraw from a treaty? This would be a very complicated process, unless they're going to break international law.
So, Britain has its relationships. It can change its relationships. The relationship between the Labour Party and Paul Kagame is developing. At the COP summit in Dubai, you had a meeting between Keir Starmer and Paul Kagame. So I wouldn't exclude anything, but I do think it's right to say that the form that we're seeing at the moment through the Rwanda bill would be amended by Labour. I think that's been very consistent on what they've been saying.
Well, Dr. Alex Vines of Chatham House, really appreciate your perspective here. Very, very interesting stuff. Good to speak with you.
Very shortly, we are going to Kent to celebrate St George's Day and all things English. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
So J. Cole, who is a rapper, says he felt terrible after releasing a song aimed at fellow rapper Kendrick Lamar and vowed to pull the track off streaming services. He said, "I ain't gonna lie to y'all. The past 2 days felt terrible," he told an audience at the Dreamville Festival in North Carolina. "I damn near had a relapse," he said.
There's a lot of young people, especially, that would look at that and they will take it not just as entertainment.
It doesn't happen in any other form of art that I can think of. This is not happening in country music, is it?
Well, it's the same problem in both cases, isn't it? Who's doing the regulating? And surely it's each case on its merits, isn't it? You don't just ban a genre.
Why is there such a lot of hatred for a man who usually would have trash-talked back to stand up and say, this doesn't sit well with me and I love this guy? If we look at, I think his name was Cody Fisher, the semi-professional footballer who died in a club because someone stabbed him. Now, he was stabbed because he stepped on someone's trainers. This is the level of ego we're seeing from a lot of young men who don't have any output of being able to channel that energy, and a lot of it is stemming from cultures like football, hip-hop, these sorts of things. So I'm just saying it's refreshing to see a man who could have easily wiped the floor with his lyrics say, I don't have to,
That is interesting, isn't it? Because I took this into the wrong direction. It's not about pointing out the areas of concern. Actually, this story is saying, look, music and art can be giving you an example of how to live a slightly better life.
That's free speech, saying, sorry. I'm sorry, I choose not to fight back because I love you. It may look like a wimpy thing to do, but it's still free speech.
You know what? I love you, Paul. Sorry about earlier.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back and happy St George's Day. We've been in Dartford in Kent, where there's been plenty of people celebrating, including our presenters and colleagues Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello, who are there. Hopefully they're still there because we're going to try and speak to them. There he is!
Unfortunately, all my equipment's just fallen off, so I can't hear a word you're saying back there in the studio, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's St George's Day. We're all celebrating here. And joining me now is one of the man behind all of this, the leader of Dartford Council, Jeremy Kite. Good to see you this afternoon.
Hello there and happy St George's Day.
I have to say, this is fantastic.
Well, we're a council that likes to party and we believe in these celebrations. It's a big day for the country and we want to celebrate it. So no naysaying here. St George's Day for us.
I have to say that one of the things, when you were giving your speech before, it's all about celebrating being English, whatever our background, which is very nice.
Absolutely. I mean, we live in a diverse community here and it's wonderfully colourful and noisy and brilliant, and we've got great people here. And the point is, this is one of a number of celebrations we do. So we'll celebrate every culture, we'll celebrate every religion, every creed that's going on. We'll latch onto it and we'll use it as a way of bringing the whole community together. So that's the aim.
And what impact has it had on community cohesion?
Well, you've been here, you see for yourself, everyone's happy. I'm not sure, we tend not to use buzzwords like cohesion, inclusion. It's just being a community and being together. People seem happy, town centre happy because they get the business and people, lots of footfall, so we're happy with that. It isn't about buzzwords, it really is just about old-fashioned community feeling.
It does, I have to say, it feels very English here today because it's just about people gathering and just having a good time and getting on with their friends and neighbours.
Well, it might feel English, but you look around, you'll see people here from all over the world that are now settled in Dartford, and this is their home. We want to make them welcome. We want to explain about our culture, our wonderful, weird, mad culture sometimes. We've got a very large St George here, a very large dragon here, explaining the story, explaining about the love we have for our country, which is just about the things we do and the things we can achieve for the world and help. So that's it, really. It's a big event for us.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic one, I have to say.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Great to see you, Jeremy Kite. Thank you.
Another flag.
I'll have another flag. Brilliant stuff. Thank you. So it's been a great day here so far, and it's going to continue for a while. Back to you. Don't ask me any questions. I can't hear a thing.
Stephen, well, thank you so much for persevering there, despite the loss of any audio equipment in your ear. Still the most patriotic and wonderful display there in Dartford. But we're interested, is where you at home quite as celebratory as Dartford is? We've seen that Nottingham is. We've been talking to our reporter Will Hollis a little bit earlier in the programme, where they've got the most enormous flag of St George in the town square there in Nottingham.
Yeah, there'll be a few pints sunk by the end of the day, I'm sure. People in costume. It's great, but we were saying earlier about how many of us actually don't celebrate St George's Day every year. It almost passes us by. And is it because it's not a bank holiday?
You do have to be quite dedicated, really, to take the day off work, to go to one of these festivities, to go to one of these celebrations, to own a suit of armour. I don't think that's perhaps everyone across the country, but it does raise the question. We've got 2 bank holidays in May and none in April. That doesn't seem particularly balanced.
So you could do a swap, one at the end of the May, put it in, but if you put the one at the end of May on the 23rd of April, does it make it so too close to Easter on some years? Could that be a little bit of a problem?
But is that so bad? Personally, I think that there's good utility in getting rid of... I think the first one in May we should get rid of. That's May Day, isn't it? The early May bank holiday. We should probably get rid of that one. Because the...
Is there a petition for that as well? You're going to start a petition,
That would
Tom?
make most sense, because you don't want all of the bank holidays too close.
OK, well, let's go straight to the States, because we're just hearing that Donald Trump, former US president, has turned up at the courthouse for day 2 of his criminal trial. I think he might have been speaking in the last few moments as well. He is due to head into the courtroom where a judge will decide whether he should be punished for violating a gag order that prevents him from criticising witnesses.
Here it is.
And we hope the people get out there and vote. It's important to vote, to let them know that we're coming on November 5th. We're coming big. Today is preliminary, but still it's very important. And maybe they'll think also about a very good person who's running for the Senate in Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick, and he's doing a good job. He's working very hard, successful man, wants to put his success to the country. He'll be a very good senator, so hopefully they'll be behind Dave and get out there and vote today. So Pennsylvania, get out and vote. What's going on at the college level and the colleges, Columbia, NYU, and others, is a disgrace. And it's really on Biden. He has the wrong signal, he's got the wrong tone, he's got the wrong words, he doesn't know who he's backing, and it's a mess. And if this were me, you'd be after me so much, but they're trying to give him a pass. And what's going on is a disgrace to our country. And it's all Biden's fault, and everybody knows it. He's got no message. He's got no compassion. He doesn't know what he's doing. He can't put two sentences together, frankly. He is the worst president in the history of our country. And again, what's going on is a disgrace. Now, it's interesting outside for great Americans, people that want to come down and they want to protest at the court, and they want to protest peacefully. We have more police presence here than anyone's ever seen. For blocks, you can't get near this courthouse. And yet you have nobody up at a college where you have very radical people wanting to rip the colleges down, the universities down. And that's a shame. But it all starts with Joe Biden. The signals he puts out are so bad. And I can tell you, he's no friend of Israel, that's for sure. And he's no friend of the Arab world either. You take a look at what he said. He's no friend of, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do. He wants to take like a middle ground, and oftentimes that doesn't work, but it's certainly not working here. But what he's done to Israel is abandon them. And he's trying to be as nice as he can to the other side. Call it the Arab world, but that's not working either because they get him. And he's an incompetent man. A peace will never happen with a guy like this. Thank you very much.
How would you work with those protesters, Mr. Trump? Do you support schools sending in police to arrest students and faculty?
It's an extraordinary sight, isn't it? Trump giving this big statement about Biden, about Israel.
Peace in the Middle East.
About to walk into his criminal trial. The man bidding to become President of the United States again. Saying that Biden is the worst president the US has ever had.
Yeah, he really fit quite a lot into that little sort of pre-court address, going from the number of police outside the courthouse to Biden's Middle East policy. I mean, it was a remarkable segue, but...
Was the judge sitting there just waiting for him to wind up?
But no, this is what happens. Anyway, we will be on the other side of the Atlantic very shortly. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is about to start a press conference in Poland, but that after your news with Sophia Wensler.
Tom, thank you. It's 2:33. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Rishi Sunak is warning that Vladimir Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. The Prime Minister arrived in Warsaw a short time ago as Britain pledges its largest ever package of aid for Kyiv, worth £500 million. He's due to meet the leaders of Poland, Germany and NATO, warning that the defence of Ukraine is essential to British and European security. Ukraine's President Zelensky welcomed the record military package, which includes long-range missiles, armoured vehicles and boats. Senior figures from the United Nations have criticised government's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, warning that it sets a worrying precedent. But the Prime Minister dismissed the concerns, saying nothing will stand in the way of flights getting off the ground after the bill finally passed through Parliament last night. And a child is among 5 migrants who've died trying to cross the English Channel after their small boat got into difficulties off the French coast. The incident happened off Wimereux Beach near Boulogne just before 2 a.m. We understand that another 3 small boats launched from an area near the site of this morning's tragedy. Latest figures show the number of migrants crossing the Channel has increased by 24% this year. Now, in the US, Donald Trump has arrived in court moments ago for day 2 of the first criminal trial of a former US president. Prosecutors claim the former president orchestrated a criminal conspiracy to corrupt the 2016 election. They also argue that payments made to an adult film star, so-called hush money, were in breach of the law. Mr. Trump denies any wrongdoing. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It should brighten up for many northern areas through the rest of the day, but it will remain fairly cloudy in the southeast. That's because a weather front has been pushing along the southeast throughout this morning. That's bringing the cloudier skies. It's a fairly weak feature by the time we get to this afternoon, but it will continue to bring quite a lot of cloud around to many southern areas of England. And in the southeast, that's where we could see some drizzly rain, particularly along the coast. Elsewhere, it should stay dry through this afternoon, and there will be a good deal of sunshine for the north and western areas. Northern Ireland, western Scotland, northwestern Wales as well, seeing highs of 15 or 16 degrees. So in the sheltered sunshine, not bad at all. But if you are exposed to this northerly wind along the east coast, you're certainly going to notice a chill in the air, and there will be quite a bit more cloud around these areas as we lead into tonight as well. That cloud will continue to pull in off the North Sea, keeping skies a little cloudier all along the east coast. We'll continue to see some cloud mainly across parts of Wales, southern England too, but across the northwest, clear skies will lead to another very chilly start. We could be down as low as -4 rurally, so a bit of a patchy frost is expected for western areas. Throughout Wednesday, it will be a chilly start, but quite a bright start. There'll be more in the way of sunshine, but still much of the sunshine will be restricted to western areas of the country and the far north, while the east still have this onshore wind bringing in more in the way of cloud and the risk of showers and that chillier feel. So temperatures closer to 8 or 9 in the east and closer to 15 in the west.
The latest GB News travel.
Hi again, good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to East Yorkshire firstly, and the Leconfield Road, the A164, is currently blocked between Dray Drive in Leconfield and the Driffield Road roundabout in Beverley, and we are seeing delays whilst a collision gets dealt with. Now the northbound M6 this lunchtime, junction 18 up toward 19, that's Middlewich, up towards Knutsford, there's a breakdown blocking a lane. Looking at the cameras though, a little bit slow past the scene. And the M4 in South Wales, north of Newport, there's queues eastbound just around junction 25A, the turn off for Newport and Cwmbran. All lanes back open following an earlier bump there. The queue though is back through the Brynglas tunnels towards 27 at High Cross, and the westbound M4 at Llanstand at 44, a lane closed off on the exit slip there for emergency barrier repairs. And that's your latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 2. Now, a former High Court judge has said that pop-up courts could cut criminal case backlogs and line up with community and justice.
Yeah, those pop-up courts could appear in your local pub, theoretically. Well, Dame Anne Rafferty thinks judges of all types could sit in pubs, in church halls and libraries to reconnect the justice system with local communities.
Well, why don't we ask a pub owner what he thinks about it? We're delighted to be joined now by City Pub Group founder Clive Watson. Clive, how would you feel, and perhaps how would those who visit your pub feel if it suddenly turned into a courtroom?
Well, I mean, obviously you've got to pick times when the pub's not going to be busy, obviously during the day. But, yeah, I think it's a really good idea. I think pubs are part of the community. I think law courts aren't part of the community, and I think we can join the two together. So I think it's a good idea.
Do you think it would in any way trivialise the whole court system, though? Because, you know, there is a certain, what's the word I'm looking for?
Gravitas.
Yeah, there's a gravitas to a courtroom, to a coroner's court that just simply wouldn't be there in a pub or in a library.
Well, look, I think you'd have to pick a pub that had a separate meeting room or something like that. I don't think it'd be appropriate if you had beer pumps behind it or a darts board or a drink machine. But I think if you had as I said, a separate room where people could go in, it felt very accessible, then I think that would definitely work, yes.
I don't know, there's a pub near where I grew up that had a light-up dance floor. It could go different colours depending if someone was found guilty or innocent. I think that would be a brilliant idea. But Clive, this isn't the first time that pubs have been used as courtrooms. There was the Stag and Hounds in Bristol. I've written a Y when I should have written a G. The Stag and Hounds in Bristol that was used as a pie powder court as recently as the 1800s.
Now we just need to explain what a pie powder court is, Tom. It was organised by a borough when there was a fair or market taking place, and it had unlimited jurisdiction, apparently, over personal actions or events that took place at the market. So that could be arguments between merchants, theft and acts of violence. Carry on.
Yeah, so not the first time it's happened.
Well, look, there you are. You've got historical precedent that justice has been administered inside a public house. I think more people would turn up to the court hearings. I think when you go and look at some gloomy magistrates' courts, all very Victorian, it puts people off. They walk up to the steps and think, I don't actually want to be here. Whereas I think if you're a defendant or whatever the situation is, and you're going to a pub, you'd actually get more people turning up.
How would it actually work? Would pubs be paid for using their premises? I mean, could it be a little extra money earner for you? Absolutely.
Yeah, why not? I mean, we're providing a public service. People come in. Who knows? We might even get some extra custom if it's the defendant's successful and he goes with his friends and has a quick beer afterwards. So, but I think being slightly serious about it, yeah, why not? Why not change, make justice more accessible, make it normalise the proceedings of justice and have it in a pub or a church or village hall. I think that would be a really good idea.
Is there not a risk here, though, that this winds up like many hotels have wound up, sort of requisitioned by the government, the owners of the establishments having no ability to trade as normal and sort of seeing your business taken away from you? Is that not a real risk here?
Well, I don't think it would be a question of requisition. I think it would be, yes, we have suitable parts of the pub which are quiet during the day, which we're happy for you to use for your court proceedings. So I don't think the government could say, look, we're having this pub at those hours, those court hearings, whether you like it or not. So it's got to be, obviously, work for the pub as well.
It would have to be, wouldn't it, for certain offences, sort of summary offences that are heard in the magistrates' court. I mean, especially when you think of the logistics. You couldn't bring a defendant in handcuffs to a pub, could you? But you could, prosecute somebody maybe for a driving offence.
For a driving offence.
Oh, very good, very good. No, of course, it'd have to be for non-high-profile cases, as you say, not dragging people out of cells or something like that. But, what I call the lower end of the justice system, I think it would be absolutely perfect. Speed up the cases, more and more people will turn up. I think also the JPs and the magistrates would quite fancy a change. Might actually improve their sort of working life. So, yeah, I think it's ticks all round, personally.
What would they do? Sit behind the bar to deliver their verdict? Behind the bar on stools?
Well, you'd have to have the judge on a stool and you could have the jury on the lower chairs, perhaps on the soft bits at the side of the pub. You could, I can imagine.
Know, it's an image. It is an image I'm struggling with. I can see it more in a library.
You've made it. Well, libraries, I think it's got to be in silence. So I think that'll be a bit difficult unless it's silent justice. But I think you made a good point. Juries, I'm sure a lot of people, as soon as they get asked to do jury service, are probably thinking, oh, do I really need to do this? But if it's going to be held in a pub, makes it a bit more interesting. So, as I said, that's a really good point as well.
Well, thank you very much, Clive Watson, the founder of the City Pub Group. Really appreciate your thoughts on this topic. It would be very interesting to see if it actually does.
If it comes off, yeah. OK, let's talk to our political editor. Christopher Hope, I think, can talk to us. Christopher, we are imminently waiting for the Prime Minister to appear at a press conference. What is he going to tell us? He's in Poland today and in Germany.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. We're expecting probably some news on defence spending. Of course, Poland is abutting Ukraine, is fully aware of the war going on not far from its borders, and so we'll be hearing more, I think, from Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister. And I think other questions too about Rwanda from the travelling press pack. And I think it's a real moment here for the PM to assert himself on the world stage. His last visit overseas, I think, was December, when we went with him, didn't we, to the COP climate conference in December. He's not one for travelling at the moment. He's been kind of hunkered down, spending a lot of visits around the UK, getting the election plans ready, allowing former Prime Minister David Cameron to take all of the accolades on the global stage. The best part of being Prime Minister normally is representing the UK overseas, the best of British and the rest of it. And if you don't get those parts of the job, it can be quite a slog, I imagine. So I think here's his chance to kind of flex his muscles on the global stage.
Well, we were seeing images earlier of him sort of strutting around with the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, also with the outgoing head of NATO. This is a significant moment for a Prime Minister who perhaps has been much more domestically focused than his predecessors. He's had domestic portfolios for his entire time as Prime Minister, whereas his two predecessors, well, they were both foreign secretaries.
Tom, you're totally right. This is a moment for him to try and push the UK forward on a global stage. There may be something on defence spending. There's pressure to go well above 2.5% at the moment, that the government's trying to hit at the moment of GDP. We may see the government go to a bigger target longer term. We'll wait and see. And we could be seeing elements of what will be the Tory manifesto written, if that's the case, because any future figure on defence spending will come after the general election.
Chris, I'm just going to jump in now because this is Rishi Sunak stepping up to the podium. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Good afternoon. My first duty as Prime Minister is the security of the British people. And fulfilling that profound responsibility is only possible because of you. Just 10 days ago, I gave the order for the RAF to join an international effort intercepting a barrage of Iranian missiles headed towards Israel. Those pilots, like you, like every generation of British servicemen and women before you, were willing to put their own safety over the line for the security of others and the defence of our liberties and our values. From your regiment service in Iraq and Afghanistan to your current role here in Poland protecting NATO's eastern flank, you've made those sacrifices in the service of our country. I'm truly humbled by your courage and your professionalism. And on behalf of a proud and grateful nation, let me simply say thank you. But I haven't just brought you here together today to express my gratitude. I want to talk to you about how we equip you to do your duty in an increasingly dangerous world. We've entered a period in history in which competition between countries has sharpened profoundly. An axis of authoritarian states with different values to ours, like Russia, Iran, North Korea and China, are increasingly assertive. The danger they pose is not new. But what is new is that these countries, or their proxies, are causing more instability more quickly in more places at once. And they're increasingly acting together, making common cause in an attempt to reshape the world order. Now, I know there are some people who will think these are faraway problems, but they are not. They pose real risk to the United Kingdom's security and prosperity. Russia has already poisoned people on British soil with chemical weapons, caused energy bills to soar, weaponized migration, and send technology to Iran in exchange for weapons, like the Shahid drones that I saw myself are wreaking such devastation in Ukraine. Iran themselves have threatened to kill and kidnap people within our borders for exercising their right to free speech, and use proxies, like the Houthis, to attack British ships in the Red Sea, disrupting supplies of crucial goods to our high streets. North Korea, too, is supplying munitions and artillery to Russia, and their hackers have targeted British businesses and the NHS. And Chinese state-affiliated actors have conducted malicious cyber campaigns against British MPs. China itself is engaged in a huge military modernization program. Potential flashpoints in the Indo-Pacific could have an impact on the global economy far larger even than COVID. And China is increasingly working with others to try and reshape the world including their so-called unlimited partnership with Russia. So the new assertiveness of these authoritarian states far from our shores must concern us, because they are increasingly acting together against the fundamental values that we all hold dear of democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. Now, we must not overstate the danger. We're not on the brink of war, and nor do we seek it. And people should feel reassured that the UK's armed forces are some of the most professional, well-trained, well-equipped and battle-ready in the world. And I'm incredibly proud of all that they've achieved, from patrolling the Arctic Circle as part of the Joint Expeditionary Force, to the campaign against Daesh in the deserts of Iraq and Syria, from protecting the freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, to policing the skies above Eastern Europe. And just look at the investments we've made in the last decade. £40 billion in the British Army, who proudly provide one of NATO's strategic reserves, with 16,000 troops deployed to Europe this year. The Royal Air Force, equipped with new Typhoons, Chinooks, F-35s, with the GCAP programme delivering new fighter jets with Japan and Italy. The Royal Navy is a carrier navy once again, with 22 new ships and submarines on the way, and the historic AUKUS partnership building the most advanced nuclear-powered subs the world has ever known. And we've launched a new national endeavour to invigorate and invest more in our nuclear deterrent. And all of this is combined with our outstanding diplomatic network, development expertise, law enforcement and intelligence agencies, and support for our allies. Above all, the £12 billion we've provided to Ukraine. So I'm proud of our record on defence and confident in our ability to deter our adversaries and ensure the security of the United Kingdom. But in a world that's the most dangerous it's been since the end of the Cold War, we cannot and must not be complacent. As Churchill said in 1934, to urge the preparation of defence is not to insert the imminence of war. On the contrary, if war was imminent, preparations for defence would be too late. I believe we must do more to defend our country, our interests and our values. So today I'm announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. We will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030. That starts today and rises steadily in each and every year. Over the next 6 years, we'll invest an additional £75 billion in our defence. And it will be fully funded with no increase in borrowing or debt. So this is not some vague aspiration for the future. We have a clear plan for what we'll spend, when we'll spend it, and how we pay for it. A plan that makes the United Kingdom by far the largest defence power in Europe and second largest in NATO. Today is a landmark moment in the defence of the United Kingdom. This is a generational investment in British security and British prosperity. It makes us safer at home and stronger abroad. Now, we will have 3 immediate priorities for this new investment. First, we will put the UK's own defence industry on a war footing. One of the central lessons of the war in Ukraine is that we need deeper stockpiles of munitions, and for industry to be able to replenish them more quickly. So today we're giving £10 billion in munitions support to give industry long-term funding certainty, backed by long-term contracts, so that they can produce more, be readier to surge capacity, and to move to always-on production when required. From surface-to-air missiles made in Bolton to anti-tank weapons in Belfast, we will replenish our stockpiles, all while supporting British jobs right across the Union. But it's not just about investing more, we must invest better. For too long, too much of our defence procurement has been over-complex, over-budget and over-time. So we are making radical reforms to our procurement model to make sure this new investment delivers value for money. And to encourage private sector investment into defence production, I can also announce today that we're going to put beyond doubt that defence investment does count towards environmental, social and governance assessments. There is nothing more ethical than defending our way of life from those who threaten it. Now, all of this will put us at the forefront of the global defence industry, allow us to hugely ramp up defence production and give our armed forces the capability they need to keep us safe. But, as in so many other areas of our lives, technology is changing the face of war. So our second immediate priority is innovation and new technology. We need to innovate and adapt faster than our adversaries in space and cyberspace, just as much as land, sea and air. Look at Ukraine. Now, many aspects of the war would be familiar to a soldier from World War I or II, yet others would be unimaginably different. Like the fact that cheap, high-tech autonomous drones could disable large parts of Russia's Black Sea fleet. Now, the good news is that innovation is already one of our greatest strengths. The UK's own Dragonfire laser directed energy weapon costs only £10 a shot, yet it's accurate enough to hit a £1 coin from a kilometre away. And today we're going further. We'll increase our defence R&D at a minimum to 5% of the defence budget, invest far more in autonomous drones, and we will set up a new Defence Innovation Agency so that for the first time, decisions about defence innovation will be brought together in a single strategic agency that will be freed from red tape and work with the private sector on emerging new technologies. Now, third, we must support Ukraine for the long term. Since the Cold War ended, the freedom of our continent has been based on a simple idea, that it is for people to decide the fate of their countries, not foreign armies. But allow Putin to win in Ukraine, and that principle of sovereignty would be undermined. We would be dragged back to a world where brute force, rather than the democratic will of free peoples, would shape borders and decide futures. And Putin will not stop in Ukraine. Win there, and he and indeed others will be emboldened. He has the desire, if not yet the capacity, to attack other countries in Europe, potentially including NATO allies, who we would be bound to defend just as they are bound to defend us. The costs of failing to support Ukraine now will be far greater than the costs of repelling Putin, because only if he fails will he and other adversaries be deterred. And that is why the United Kingdom, whose history of standing up to dictators is so much part of our national consciousness, has come together with our allies to stand with Ukraine from the very start. Today we go further. We will send Ukraine an additional £500 million, hitting £3 billion of support this year, and will provide them with the largest ever package of UK military equipment. This will include more than 400 vehicles, 4 million rounds of ammunition, 60 boats and offshore raiding craft, vital air defences, and long-range, precision-guided Storm Shadow missiles. And as we make our historic commitment to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, we'll move past this stop-start, piecemeal way of backing Ukraine, so that alongside our long-term security guarantee, we are today providing a long-term funding guarantee of at least the current level of military support to Ukraine for every year it is needed. That is the longest commitment any nation has provided, and it shows that Ukraine is not alone, and Ukraine will never be alone. A decade ago, as Russian tanks rolled into Crimea and the fight against ISIL raged across the Middle East, NATO allies came together in Wales and reached a historic agreement to increase their defence budgets to 2% of GDP. Back then, the UK was one of only 4 countries who did so. Today, there are 11, and I believe we will look back on this moment as a similar turning point in European security. Because for all that we welcome the news over the weekend that the United States Congress agreed a new package of aid for Ukraine, support that will be indispensable on the front line, this is not the moment for complacency. We cannot keep expecting America to pay any price or bear any burden if we ourselves are unwilling to make greater sacrifices for our own security. So I'm proud that the United Kingdom is increasing our defence spending to £87 billion a year, the biggest strengthening of our national defence in a generation, guaranteeing our position as the second largest defence power in NATO after the US. All across Europe, countries like Poland, Germany, Norway, and the Baltic nations are stepping up to take greater responsibility for our own security. And I'm confident that whether in months or years, others will follow too. And at this turning point in European security,